Alright. Get into my stream area here, which I think we just keep adding more and more plushies to the point where it's getting, again, kind of difficult to get back in here. But, hello! We're here. I got a lot of stuff around me right now. That's fine. I'm going to move some of it as we go anyway. Put Vaporeon down here so she's okay. First, showing off. I never showed this guy on stream yet, and I really wanted to, so we're going to talk about him first. Or her. I kind of see it as a little bit more female because of the pink, but we're going to talk about him in a minute. Anyway, let me move my mic a little closer so that my very low voice is easier. Anyway, so before we get started, obviously, showing off time. This is probably the thing I love the most I've ever made. I wish, this is one of those things that, like, Mara's been over and she's like felt it and she's like, that's amazing. I'm like, yeah, I know. You seeing it doesn't do it justice, but this is a pattern called the Forest Guardian. Gosh, what's the name of the pattern maker? Gosh, I have to look it up. I'll look it up in a minute. Made these super cute patterns, and they only have like 3 of them. I want to buy the other 2, I just haven't yet. I'm waiting for, I'll even take like a 5% off sale when it comes to buying patterns, but I'm like, generally it's kind of like video games. I'm trying not to buy too many because then I'll never make them. But anyway, this is called Forest Guardian. I made, anyone who knows, hey, welcome. Glad to see you. It's first time joining. Everyone waved to the new guy. Anyway, so, this is called Forest Guardian pattern. So the first one I made, some people might be known, it was at my house for a while, was one I made with like this kind of, what was it called, like plum fields or something like that. It was like a green, red, white sort of pattern. Yes, Squishy Stitch, that's it. Yeah, love her patterns. They're, like, I saw it on, I follow a lot of people on Instagram, that's where I go and find patterns, is I go and like, be like, oh, that's cute, let me go buy it. But I saw her make this pattern, and I was just like, that looks so cute. I'm a sucker for anything with big ears. That's why I got a couple of quite a few bunny patterns. But I saw this one, and so I made the original pattern, and it wasn't too hard. You know, it had a bit of sewing. It's a bit top-heavy in the head area, but I'm like, I have this lovely yarn that I got, again, clearance, called Brunette Velvet Plush. So it's like the regular velvet stuff I have over here I've kind of shown before, but it's thicker and it's heavier, and so it makes for this, like, you ever seen one of those, like, compression pillow sort of things? It has a lot, I can't really tell it here, but I guess you can see it has a lot of weight to it. I know there's no way to really show it, but it has a lot of weight to it. It has kind of almost like this, like, self-cooling effect, kind of like those self-cooling pillows. So this guy weighs probably about, like, 8 pounds on its own. And honestly, the ears alone probably are that much. But it works up, because originally when I made the pattern, I had to make a pink inside for the ear, so I was using some clearance yarn I had, and I used this stuff. And it turned out way bigger, first of all. That's why you don't use different kinds of yarn during a project, because you never know, it's probably not going to work up the same way. But, this is actually a 7-weight yarn up here, in the yellow and the horns, even though it looks thin. That just tells you how thick this is, even though this is an 8-weight yarn. Yes, hefty, soft, and lovely. I'll probably sell, if I sell this one, it'll probably be like $100 or something, because I don't really want to part with it. I'm really proud of this one. This is my first time using glass eyes, which I think are super cute. And I did the markings myself, because, like, it's supposed to be one solid color. You see his head doesn't really stay up. But, and I actually made, like, one pot a little bit smaller than the other one, because that's what happens when you're doing a pattern and not really paying attention to the parts you're making. And this is also because I didn't have, I had more white than I did pink, so, like, the patterns kind of changed as I went along, as I waited for my new shipment to come in. And, you know, he's got a cute little tail here. You know, I made little markings on his tail. It's hard to see, but you can kind of see here, I did, like, spiral pattern around his horns. That was me just kind of messing around with the yarn and seeing what I could do. And I gave him little cheeks. So this was my first time kind of like looking at a pattern and being like, what can I do with this? But I realized I've never shown this guy on stream. I love this guy. He's so cute. I'm probably not going to sell him. Or I'll sell him for like $100. And even then, I might not sell him. I really love this guy. I want to hug him all the time. Because he's nice and weighted and he's so soft. This, it is a hand workout though, let me tell you. Most of the time when you're doing with super fuzzy yarn, the issue is seeing your stitches. Kind of the thing with this one is that you just have to really work at it. It's heavy, So obviously trying to, like, you know, crochet the pieces of the ears together was a bit of a hand workout, you know. The weight of doing the head and stitching that on is a bit of a workout. Getting the stitching onto the arms was a bit of a workout, but it's got cute little toes. So, yeah, I just wanted to show this guy on stream as long as we were here so we can get started. But very cute. It doesn't shed too bad either. Like, it sheds at the end, but it doesn't, like, shed off of itself, which is the biggest thing for, like, the Premier yarns, is that they kind of shed even if you rub them a little hard. Like, so this yarn is meant to make, like, fuzzy pillows and stuff like that, so it doesn't shed too bad, which is nice. Just on the ends. I'm making a shawl right now, and I have to take a break because hand cramps and tension. Yeah. It also depends what kind of pattern you're working with. Like, for instance, I'm assuming you're working in rows. Like, when I make these, the technical Japanese form is amigurumi, but plushies are typically worked in the round, so they go in a spiral. Or you can do it, you know, a chain one in slip stitch, but they're the same effect. Some people say there's a difference. I don't really see much of a difference. I only do that if I, like, just can't get my knot tight enough. Sometimes I'll do that, but, like, generally. So, yeah, this is this buddy. He's, so I call him, like, just, like, a little angel guardian, because it looks like an angel chow. I have some black and blue I would love to do with this yarn, but again, that one would probably be when I have to work double, because black yarn is very hard to see the stitches on. But, obviously, I bought, like, a lot more of this kind of yarn to make another project with because it's so soft and it's nice and weighted. I would love to make maybe a sea monster. That'd probably be a good one to have some nice weight on it. So, just wanted to show him. I guess we'll have him hang out back here. Nice to have one of the plushies I actually made as opposed to just buying a ridiculous amount of plushies. Anyway, so here's where we are with Chica. Here's where we left off last time. The only thing I changed was this was just a body and a head before. I just put the pieces together, so here she is. She needs her beak, so we're going to put her beak on. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to make her bib now or later, but we're going to put that together. And then maybe I'll show you my dragon I've been working on for a long time. As long as we're also showing off. I talked about potion bottles last time. This one's not going to show up because it's literally the same green as my green screen. So this one's not going to show up. But I can show you, like, this is my, like, Eventide Dusk one. Lovely yarn thing. I think the color's called Lava Lamp, but lovely color right there. I have to make the topper still, but and then, like, again, another green one, so you can't really tell it. But this is Con Prep. These are easy patterns to do, so I'm done with commissions for now. So I just work on those when I have a pretty yarn, and I just want to be I have a lot of pretty colors sometimes, and so sometimes instead of, like, wanting to follow a pattern, this is for my next one. Then I'll just use it instead of, like, making something that I'm supposed to be working on. I'll be like, oh, let me make another potion bottle. So here's her mouth. We're going to work on that. Where's my tools? And if I feel motivated enough, I'll work on the potion bottle stoppers. But they're honestly kind of boring to make, so we'll see how that goes. So this is got her beak here. We're going to sew those pieces on. So the idea here is that normally you make the beak and you put the pieces together to make one beak. But since she has a split beak anyway, we're going to try and stitch it on and see if that works. This is also what it is. It's like I know how to do the pattern after a couple times, so it's kind of like me going in and being like, okay, how can I do this? And will this look the way it looks in my head? Which is always the question. I got this on, like, Amazon. It's like the little thing of needles I got here. Like, I've never used anything else. Like, I don't know if there's, like, specialty needles out there or something like that, but I literally got this for, like, it came with a set of eyes on Amazon, so it works pretty well. I need my scissors. And I'll probably need that. So yeah, we're just gonna hang out here, just doing the detailing on Withered Chica here. And then maybe start another Chica, or I might start my dragon. Again, my dragon's something I'm constantly fighting back and forth with, and if I wasn't empowered by fandom love, I probably wouldn't keep going with it, but I have a vision in mind. I'm gonna make it happen. So, first I gotta weave in the stuff on this thing, so this one's not sticking out. But, yeah, so to speak on that, I'll show you, well, we'll speak a little bit more on that when I get to my dragon, but for right now, I'm just gonna try and get her beak pieces in. And this one's honestly, to get flats like that, you still work in the round, but instead of working all the way around, you just work only half of them go back and forth. So this one's starts in a round, but you work it like a row because you go back and forth the chain 1. So it's kind of like a little bit both. It's an interesting way to do a beak. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think I'm necessarily knowledgeable enough yet to make my own patterns, but it would be nice to eventually do it. Like, I would love, I have so much, the only color I have more of than, like, the numerous blues I have downstairs, or I have shades of red and black and white, because one of my goals is I would love to do, like, a chibi Alistair sort of one, like, as a deer, a little demon deer. I think that'd be fun. So, that's a goal at some point to do. You see, even just pulling back and forth with the needle, this is already, I don't know if you can see it right there. This is already kind of shredding. So not the best thing to sew with, but it's soft. Okay, it's 1/2. Let's fix the things in here. So I'd love to do like an Alistair thing. I have a lot of deer patterns. The problem is trying to find one that does it like the way I want it to look. So I'm kind of like looking at different patterns. Yeah. Oh, I do actually have a Sonic and Shadow pattern, which I do want to do at one point. I was originally planning to do before the movie, but unfortunately, I really should probably do the things I'm paid to do first before I start experimenting. So, such is life. I need to be doing commission. Again, the thing that probably set me back the most was that just huge commission I got on Etsy, which, it's nice to make a $150, payday, but it also meant that I wasn't working on, like, stuff for me or stuff for our con, so, such is life. But we have to ship that thing out today because it's supposed to be out by the 31st, so gotta get that bundle. Maybe I'll come and show those on stream as well if anyone's interested. They ordered a couple of they had a Withered Bonnie, Shadow Freddy, Funtime Freddy, which I am seriously, for real this time, not making again. I didn't really enjoy doing it the first time. The pattern itself is fine, just, it's the same Freddy I use all the time. Just, the white yarn is more stiff, because I think it's, it's bleached, so it's just stiffer to work with. And then I just do not like making the Bonnie hand puppet on it. It looks cute, sure, but I just don't like making it. It requires a lot of precision and a lot of, like, tiny pokey around sort of stuff, so it's just kind of a pain in the butt to work with. And so, that's what I get for saying things out loud, though, because it was, like, one of those things where I'm like, finally, I am done with this thing, and I will never have to do it again. And then literally we streamed, and that night someone ordered it again. I'm like, okay, we really need to get that thing off the shop, because I do not want to keep making this. Withered Bonnie on mine. I'll make a lot of Withered Bonnies. I enjoy making Withered Bonnie, and he's not too hard, because I can, don't have to do as many parts for him, because he's missing a lot of limbs. But, like, Withered Bonnie I didn't mind making. Even Shadow Freddy wasn't bad. I only did one of those, and I did like how it came out the first time. So let's see, we're going to put you on there like that. I think. I forgot my pincushion. Crap. Oh well. We're going to try and stick this in with needles then. Because I just sat down. When in doubt, be resourceful, I guess. So we're going to stick it with my smaller needles because I don't need a lot of pins right now, but after I'm done with this, I will have to go and find my pincushion probably, but one of them was already made. Like my giant Bonnie, which I enjoyed. It took a while, but again, and that's the thing sometimes, is that none of these take labor hours me very long. Like, if I focus on it, I can actually get things done pretty fast, which is, I've been told is pretty impressive. But, like, the bigger thing is that I get bored sometimes, or I get frustrated with doing large pieces sometimes. That's why I have this one dragon sitting next to me that's just been taking forever. Because I just keep... I got stuck on one part of its body. It's supposed to be worked all in one shape. I got stuck. Like, this doesn't look right. Why does this not look right? This is frustrating the heck out of me. So put the top one on there, like that. And we can put the bottom one like that. And we'll do some... Yeah, that'll look kind of creepy. Anyway, so let's start pushing this bad boy in. So, yeah, I'm supposed to be doing more market prep. That's what I'm doing now, I guess you could say. Making this Withered Chica here. Not to say I don't have anything. It's just when people keep ordering it, I have less. So that's why I told Mallory, like, we gotta close the shop or I'm not gonna have anything for us to sell. And it's not entirely right. I have, like, there's, my fandom stuff always goes first, obviously. But, you know, the non-fandom stuff is still there. So it's like, not that we won't have anything to purchase, but just the things that we know we could sell a lot of, I won't have a lot of. And also sometimes, I don't know, you just don't want to work on the same thing over and over again sometimes, so. Which I think is within my right to feel that way sometimes, so. And I know that I should have probably learned how to properly sew at some point, but I did not. So I kind of, whenever I sew things, I kind of am just like, this feels vaguely right? My mom's way better at sewing, but she's at work right now. And this is honestly, we have gotten a system where, like, I'll make the pieces and she'll sew them on, and it generally just looks nicer. But this is a really small part, so I don't mind sewing this part on. I'll make her sew the beak of my other Chica. But, like, this one's one where I'm like, it's a really small part. I don't really mind that much sewing it. Problem's just getting the stitches at the right angle. There we go. Hide the threads that it's secure, it's fantastic. Yeah. She's, yeah. She just makes neater stitches than I do. Because I don't entirely understand the concept of the whole in and out with the needle thing, so I just a little bit more haphazard about it. So hers just look better, especially when just as part that needs to be stuffed, it looks a little bit more plush. So I'm also pinning things with needles right now instead of using the pins that I should be using, but I don't feel like going downstairs to get my pin cushion. I might in a minute, but we'll see. And again, the other thing is just this yarn shreds, so I have to not pull it too tight or else it will just come right off. So it won't be a ton of talking at the moment while I'm sewing this because I need to pay attention to what I'm doing. Other things I can do mindlessly, but this thing's something I have to kind of pay attention to. Although, you know, you brought up Sonic and Shadow. Anyone seen the Sonic 3 movie today? We're going at 4 today, for my mom's birthday. We splurged on the expensive tickets. We're going to see it in Dolby surround sound. And the reason is not because we want to splurge on tickets, because the regular showings had no seats. So we're like, we're going to do the expensive showings that no one else will buy, and that way we can actually get decent seats. Because we can't do an earlier one because my dad has meetings, but it's going to be a family outing. And, yeah, anyone who hasn't watched the other Sonic movies, definitely watch them. They're probably... That's okay. I won't talk about it on stream, okay? I won't spoil. I'm a big spoiler person. That was like the other, I'll say this with love, but the other day, Christiane's describing, like, we're talking at yesterday at the party, and she's talking about, like, the movie The Wild Robot, and which I really want to see, and she's like, oh, this thing happens, and I'm like, that wasn't in the trailers, I didn't know that thing happened. She's like, well, it's pretty obvious, it happens in the first 10 minutes, I'm like, I didn't know it was going to happen, and now I'm going to know. Spoiler territory, please. Spoilers don't matter too much, depending on what the property is. Like, if you're going in and being like, oh, Harry Potter's parents are dead. I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of a universal zeitgeist at this point. But, like, when you're going and being like, I know this thing happens, but I don't know by what means it happens, is kind of the more important thing. Case in point, for instance, when I was playing Star Rail, like I said, the first thing I got was, like, Don Hunt's dragon form. So, technically a spoiler, I know that when you first get him, he's not actually a human. He's actually this dragonkin race. I don't know how or why, though, and those are the more important spoilery things. The journey as to how he's like that, or why he's like that, or more importantly, why he's hiding that ability, is the important thing. It's not the fact that he's a dragon. He is. And I know that because I have the unit. So when it comes to, like, spoiler things, like, yeah, I know, like, I might be like, this person's parents are dead. I'm like, yeah, I know that. the method as to how that happened is more important, because that's the thing that is more character motivating. So, helps if it, if it helps. I'm out of country Monday till January, so you're free to pop in the chat again. I wouldn't do that to other people though, because I know that a lot of people won't watch it for like a little while. So I'll do the typical Pokemon rule whenever you're in a roleplay group, where you have to give it like a month for everyone else to catch up, and then you can talk about it. I'll just say if I like it, which probably say a lot on its own, because the Sonic movies are really just, well, I'm glad they kind of gave Sega a kick in the pants, because they're like, hey, we're a movies theater and we're doing your characters better than you are. We're making them more endearing than you are. We actually understand that we can do more than like crude humor. Which, to mind you, I don't mean crude humor in terms of potty jokes. I mean in terms of like the writing jokes for 5-year-olds, and even then 5-year-olds come up with wittier jokes. It's like, you can't give a one-liner in every single boss fight, or else the boss doesn't feel like a threat. You know, if Sonic's not bothered by fighting Eggman, even when he has a giant laser pointed at his face, then is that really Sonic being strong, or is the fact that Eggman's an incompetent villain? And if you do that in every boss fight, then you're kind of like, why am I even rushing? Clearly this guy can't hurt anyone. Half the time I don't do anything and his own stuff blows up. It's like, I call it like the Doofenshmirtz principle, where like if you watch Phineas and Ferb with Doofenshmirtz, you know that like most of the time his things go wrong because of himself, which is fine. It's the humor of the thing. But I'm like, half the time if Perry the Platypus didn't do anything, or like one of his other like horrible family members didn't do anything, his things would blow up on their own. So that's why he's not really a threat. That's why he's not a true villain. Dr. Eggman, at least in the earlier ones, was a threat. He was still a little jokey because, again, he looks like a giant egg, but, like, he still needed to be a threat, which is, I think, something that the movie got on good. Which is why I actually think that it was very smart casting to do Jim Carrey, because he's not going full Jim Carrey like, you know, like, super crazy he's done in some of his movies. He has a nice balance of realism. I think that's why the first movie was so important, to show him before he goes, like, kind of crazy, and then the middle one is him being like full Eggman, but it's still like, you know, this guy is dangerous because he's unhinged, and because he's smart and can put that in a dangerous place, and also just, you know, Sonic's own insecurities and his own dealing with people that are stronger than him. I can already kind of guess how this is going to go, because I saw one of the trailers that's like, you know, Sonic like racing with Knuckles and Tails and being like, you're racing against the fastest thing in the universe, there's no way you're going to keep up. I'm like, his world's about to be rocked. That's the thing I've always said with like Shadow and Sonic, where they're like, a race against the two, who would win? I don't know. A fight against the two, Shadow would probably win most of the time. Largely because Shadow's like the combination of Knuckles and Sonic together, where like the strongest character in canon in the comics gets a little weird, but in video game canon, usually Knuckles is the strongest character in the Sonic canon. So the fact that you can have like, so the reason like if Knuckles and Sonic fight, they come to a draw, is because Sonic's way faster, Knuckles can hit way harder and can take more of a beating. So they kind of balance each other out. This is something they did in like the Sonic X anime a few times. The two will like fight, and then everyone just kind of like lets it happen, because the two of them will go at it until they're tired out, and then they'll you know, to do their whole alpha male thing, will be like, okay, we've come to an understanding, we can move on. So we've got the top half of her beak there. And I'm going to put these things apart, and I'm going to do a little bit of detailing with some thread to do some wiring details, which always just adds like that extra level of polish there. Okay, and then we're going to tie this off. But so Sonic and Shadow are about to fight. The reason this is a more unequal fight is because besides being as fast as Sonic, if not faster, it's never been confirmed who's faster, because actually the funny thing is the games flip-flop all the time. One game will say Sonic's faster, one game will say Shadow's faster, and most games do the good job of showing it's equal, and it's kind of like Superman racing the Flash. They've never truly tested it, because they'd probably destroy the Earth at the speeds they'd be moving. But, not to mention, like, we're not even getting into when they go, like, super form and stuff like that. Like, that it enhances all their abilities even further than that. But, like, the biggest thing that's a differing power between them is that, like, Shadow is, like, the only one who can keep up with Sonic. Like, truly, when he's going full tilt. The thing that tips it out of balance is the fact that Shadow's also, like, a living weapon. So he's, pretty much immortal. It takes a lot to get him down. Mainly, like, the biggest things, like, sometimes, like, if he goes, like, his unlimited mode, which is like when he takes his limiter rings off. Those are the things he has on his wrists. Then he can burn himself out, like, you know, just by going too much energy at once, because he has a direct connection to the chaos field, which is, you know, the force of energy that powers Sonic's world, the chaos emeralds, so on and so forth, unlimited levels of power, and he can tap into that whenever he wants, essentially. And if he has a chaos emerald on him, then you're just not gonna win, because he can literally teleport in like a fraction of an eye, you know, like a blink of an eye. So but he's incredibly strong. Like, he can lift far more than his like, he's 3 feet tall, and yet he can, like, you know, break through like, not even bothering, because Sonic can break through things with momentum because he's very fast. Shadow breaks through things because he's just brutally strong. Like, very powerful thing in a very tiny package. It's a little crooked, but that's not too bad. Not too bad. But, so, like, Shadow's just brutally strong, and that any of his chaos abilities, like his ability to stop time, throw chaos spears, in addition that he has all the abilities that Sonic has, so the iconic ones like the spin dash and the homing attack. But, and just, if it came down to it, Shadow's strong enough to keep up with Knuckles. Knuckles is stronger in terms of brute strength, but the reason that whenever Knuckles and Shadow fight, it's a big difference because Shadow is as fast as Sonic. So normally Sonic's speed is what counters Knuckles' power, but if Knuckles is facing Shadow, it's usually just not even a contest in the games. Not the comics is a totally different continuity. There's a lot of different things going on there. Not to mention, they did some really weird lore with the echidnas for a while, but then, like, they had one time an anime fight between Shadow and Knuckles, and it just wasn't even close, because not only Shadow is at least strong enough to deal with Knuckles and take his punches, he's 10 times faster than him. So he can usually be in and out of the fight before Knuckles even knows what hits him. And that's actually something I like that you can see in the trailer. Like, you watch the trailer for the Sonic 3 movies, you see Knuckles darts at him immediately. He's like, I'm going to fight this guy. And then he immediately gets wrecked because Shadow's so much faster than him, but that before even Knuckles can throw a punch, Shadow's already there and, like, twisting his wrist backwards and then beating him down before he can even do anything. And that's his normal speed, without minding the fact that he can teleport, you know? And then every time he gets, like, a Chaos Emerald, it just enhances his abilities further. Like, he's stupidly powerful, but that's, you know, only when he feels the need to. And most of the time, Shadow just can't be bothered to go all out unless it's a really dangerous enemy. Not to him, necessarily. Again, that's something that he kind of got a little messed up in the later continuity of the comics, where they're like, oh, Shadow just has to throw around his power. Like, no, the reason he never goes all out is because, one, it tires him out, and he knows that leaves himself vulnerable, and he's not stupid. As much as sometimes the continuity wants to say that he is. But, he just doesn't want to use his full power in kind of the Superman way, because he knows it causes a lot of damage, and he was, you know, again, traumatized by an event where people thought he was a weapon and dangerous, and so they killed everyone around him because they thought he was dangerous. And so essentially, him doing that is just proving them right. So that's why he chooses not to use all of his power at any given time, unless something really is pushing him to go all out. But usually at that point, we're talking about something that's taking, like, all the Sonic heroes to deal with. It's not, you know, we're talking pretty bad if they were at that stage. So it's going to be interesting to see in the movie where we're in this, and Sonic 2 was always setting up for either Metal Sonic or Shadow to show up, because it was pointing out the fact that, like, Sonic is the only one who can get all the power of the Chaos Emeralds. He's the fastest thing in the universe. You know, like, they're doing it, like, this is Sonic at, like, his peak, or at least one of his peaks. So, like, he's feeling unchallenged. He's feeling like, you know, because the other reason I can think that they might use Metal Sonic is, again, we've teased that a lot. Dr. Robotnik, Eggman, having one of Sonic's quills has, like, unlimited power. So we've teased that before, that he can get the power out of that. Only a matter of time before he uses that to create Metal Sonic. Metal Sonic's showing up in the series at some point. It might be in the third movie, or it might be later. And then also, second movie introduced Gun, and I'm just like, which is, you know, the Guardian of Nations. So obviously they're like, okay, we're leading into Shadow could show up because he's related to that. Gun is known, you know, they're the ones that caused the Ark disaster, and they're also the ones who sealed Shadow away for 50 years, you know. So I'm like, Gun in the second movie was also like, okay, they might be showing Shadow, but also Robotnik doing his experiments showed maybe Metal Sonic, so one of them was showing up. It makes sense to go with Shadow first. He's just a very well-known character. So that was obvious, but Sonic's at his peak, like at the end of the second movie. He's just discovered he can do a super form. He's incredibly powerful at this point, like unchallenged. So the fact that, like, you know, they show the yeah, gun. Yeah, I like that. That's the other thing I like about the second movie, is that I like that they're just self-aware enough about how ridiculous some of these Sonic lore things, where they're like, we're the Guardian United Nations, I think it's like Tom or whatever, is like, you know, Sonic's essential dad figure, and he's like, you're aware of what what that spells out to be. I don't think that quite is as comforting as you think it is. You know, I like that they're self-aware enough to do stuff like that. And that's the thing, also. Sonic is innately kind of goofy. So I think that the movies have done a good job of leaning into that just enough. Yes, I've not watched the Knuckles show, but I am aware of it. Well, the show was alright. Good background noise for Crochet. Yeah, I'll watch it at some point. Again, this is kind of what I was getting at. The movie knows just to be goofy enough. It has to have, in order to have true drama, you do have to have some level of comedy. Because you have to balance tragedy out with comedy, otherwise you're taking yourself too seriously with a rather ridiculous concept. But you can't be so self-aware that you don't take anything seriously. This was honestly, I liked the Mario movie. I thought it was an enjoyable film, but this is why I didn't think it did anything deep, because in some ways it's a little too self-aware of its video game roots. So when it's trying to do, like, you know, it was a good movie. I do think it's a good movie. It was well animated. Obviously we have our own opinions about the voice actors, but nothing against, what was it, Chris Pratt, I think, did Mario? Nothing against him, it's just like, Mario has a voice actor. You couldn't get that guy to do it for you? They got Tails' original voice actor for the movie. Like, they went to the lady who does Tails' voice for the video games, and they got her. And the fandom was, like, overjoyed. That they're like, wow, that's great, because everyone was a little, what was it, James Marsden, I think, does Sonic's voice? And he does a good job, I think. To be fair, I preferred him over the, I prefer, because again, I've said before, I don't like Shadow's voice actor in the games. I don't really care for Sonic's voice actor. He's gotten better. He did much better in Sonic Frontiers. But, so actually that's why I was actually hoping they didn't use Shadow's voice actor. So, doing Keanu Reeves, great tie-in, just because of the fact that we had the one joke in the first Sonic movie about, like, Sonic being a super fan of Keanu Reeves and loving to watch his movies, so it's really funny to have him now be the voice for Shadow, his main rival in the third game. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was an okay movie. I thought it did some very entertaining things. Just, it's nothing that I was like, okay, that was impressive. It's more like predictable, but that's what Mario is. Mario has very little lore outside of the RPG games. It has no character, really. It's a game in the most gameiest way. That's why I always gravitated towards Sonic growing up versus Mario, because it's like, you play one Mario game, you play them all. They all play the same. They might have a different setting, but it's the same setup, same things. Sonic games, when growing up, were like, you never knew what you were going to get, especially during the Wii era. Sonic games could be pretty much anything. And that was a good thing and that was a bad thing, but, you know, like, you never knew what you were going to get, and the characters had, like, actual depth. Sonic Adventure 2 was the first game I completed of the Sonics. Was it Sonic? It was I either did Sonic Adventure 1 first. Sonic Adventure 2 and 1 I completed close to each other, but they were the first Sonic games and first games, essentially, I completed on my own. Back in the original Dreamcast. Old consoles. If you know what that is, I'm impressed. But, and they felt like they had actual emotional stakes. Like, Tikal, Shadow, like, they were meant to be one-off characters, but they had actual emotional stakes. Like, you felt for these characters. You knew that they were in situations essentially beyond their control. And they weren't bad people. They were just stuck in bad situations. And that was kind of the beauty of, like, the early generation Sonic was not, like, it was not like, you know, that he was, obviously he was a cool character, but it was the fact that, like, he was a character who had heart. He saw that, like, these people who were hurting, he could have defeated Perfect Chaos in Sonic Adventure 1 like Bowser. And just been, this is a rampaging lizard that's hurting people, and I have to beat it down. I need to save the people. But instead, he goes, like, through the course of this story, you learn about Perfect Chaos and why he came to be the way he is. The whole deal with the Chaos Emeralds, whole deal with Tikal, and, who's, you know, essentially, like, the kidnapped princess. And, like, at the end of it all, Sonic's like, I could just beat him. But, you know, like, Tikal's like, I can seal him away in the emerald again. That's where perfect chaos came from. That's where chaos came from. He was sealed away and then broken out. And the reason was he was sealed away the first time with all this rage and anger that when he came out, he immediately went back to destroying things. And Sonic's like, that's just repeating history. We can seal him away. He'll still be upset and angry and hurt inside. Reasonably so, like why he was hurt. He's like, that won't, he literally, his line is like, that won't change how he feels inside, even if I beat him. I have to go and calm him down. And we have to, like, make it so he doesn't feel so hurt inside anymore. So that's why he uses the positive energy of the Chaos Emeralds. Chaos took the negative in his super form in order to calm Chaos down, to bring him out of that rage spiral. And then after that, Sonic and his friends go and be like, hey, it's okay. Like, Chaos is a mutated Chao. He's like, your friends are still here. They've been scattered, but like that's why the Chao Garden, oddly enough, has like a story purpose in Sonic Adventure 1. They're like, they're still here. People are taking care of them. Humans are caring for them now. And it's, it's all right. You can go in peace now. And him and Tikal pass on to the afterlife together after that. But it's a very important distinction to make, especially as a child, I think. That, like, that's why I always was, like, a Sonic fan over, like, a Mario fan. Both games are fun to play, but at the end of the day, it was the Sonic game, the ending of Sonic Adventure 1, and then even more Sonic Adventure 2. Which is why everyone holds them as, like, the pinnacle of Sonic games, even though people like to clown on them for their gameplays. It's like, it wasn't about the gameplay. The gameplay was great. It was good. It had its issues. But it was the storytelling, especially at a young age, that this hero, wanted not to defeat his enemy just because they were dangerous. He wanted to help his enemy, And this was something that, granted, even Sonic stumbled on in like the 2000s era. We had the dark era, which ironically was about darker themed games, but they actually were still pretty good. The Wii era, the Colors era, is where it was the true Dark Ages, because they forgot that kind of core center heart is what makes Sonic a hero. Is he has that compassionate heart at the end of the day. He can be a speedster, he can be impatient, he can, be a nuisance sometimes, but at the end of the day, he's always very compassionate. And that's why at the end of the day, like, he gets along with people like Knuckles, like Shadow, because at the end of the day, they might be different in ideology, but at the end of the day, they all have that compassionate heart that, in the case of like Knuckles and Shadow, they've been through stuff. They have their own traumas to deal with. But at the end of the day, they don't like to see people suffer. So they will come together and work together. That's the thing that really is, like, at the end of the day, is I feel most beautiful about, like, the Sonic fandom. The reason I love it so much is that, like, when you're a younger kid, these things are important, I think. And just nothing against Mario. If you love Mario, that's great. And I do like the Mario spin-off games. But, like, that's why I think when you have a Mario movie, it's a fun time for kids, but that's all it ever was. It can be a little self-aware of itself, but Mario doesn't have that heart innately baked into his games, the core, like, of the franchise. Sonic does, which is why, and that's something I'm glad that they did. I mean, like, first of all, let's just be glad that they listened and changed Sonic's model so it wasn't so ugly, and they made him a little bit more, like, but that's the thing at the end, and that's why Sonic, I think, is pretty good in the movies, is because he's still a kid trying to figure out how to become a hero. And then the second movie is him essentially stepping into that space of being a hero. And I think the third movie that I had to theorize is essentially going to be, like, is going to test that compassionate heart Sonic has. Essentially being like, I'm going to make a prediction and assume something's going to happen to Sonic's caretakers, Tom and Maddie, in some way, and Shadow's going to be, like, indirectly responsible for it. Essentially, because we show clips of Sonic looking really angry, and that's the thing. It's like, Sonic's never, like, out of all the cast, hasn't, like, experienced major tragedy in the way, like, a lot of the other characters do. So that's why, in a lot of iterations, like the anime, and it seems like probably the movies, like, when pressed with that major tragedy, what would you do? And that's where I think that the two will connect, and ultimately Sonic and Shadow will get along at the end of the movie, much like they do in Sonic Adventure 2, is that I imagine Sonic's going to feel that rage and anger of someone you care about being hurt, and that's where he's going to find the empathy for Shadow, who's doing the exact same thing. He lost all that he loved at essentially a very young age. He had been created, like, maybe 6, 8 months ago. He was still just kind of figuring life out. He was very innocent to start out off with, even though he was so incredibly powerful. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He just wanted to protect others. And then to be met with such, senseless violence, and to have that pain essentially locked away, similar way to Perfect Chaos, for such a long time, and to come out and with all that rage and anger, like, what do you do with it? I think that's where we'll see how the movie does. Again, all the movie has to do to succeed is just follow the baseline of Sonic Adventure 2. It's still one of the best regarded stories in the Sonic series because of that, because it's like, suffering and loss is something that I think everyone can, even if they've not experienced it, everyone can empathize to. Because everyone has that fear of loss. So everyone can, like, be like, hey, not a good thing to do to go and try and destroy all of humanity, but you kind of, when you learn more about Shadow, you're like, that's why I think everyone loved him so much, and that's why they demanded for him to come back as a character, even though he was meant to be a one-off character in Sonic Adventure 2, was that they're like, they empathize with this character. Much in the way that they did with, like, Knuckles and Tikal in the Sonic Adventure 1, but there was, like, this, this understanding for what he had gone through. And you're like, yeah, honestly, if I was in that position, I'd probably be pretty angry too. And that's why I'm like, I'm thinking that's why I was like, when they announced the fact that, like, the Sonic 3 movie was coming, and, they gave you the cliffhanger at the end, the Shadow was going to be in it. I'm so excited because they've proven in the second movie they know how to handle vulnerability and humor with this series, which is what makes the Sonic series good. That's the issue the Colors era ran into, is that they didn't know how to be vulnerable. In order for us to truly, and this is the thing the Marvel heroes have an issue with right now, a hero has to fall, because what we truly root for, what the truly thing that we want to see, is how they stand up again, because we in our regular lives get knocked down, and sometimes it's hard to stand up again. So that's why we like stories of heroes who stand up. Like the quote I've said before on streams, like, kids don't need to know that monsters exist. Stories exist to not tell them that, because they already know the monsters exist. Stories exist to tell them the monsters can be defeated. That you can be knocked down and stand back up again. That you can, like, that, you can be strong even if you're scared. That's the thing that, like, that's why I was never too concerned about the Sonic movie, because I was like, they've already proven they know how to deal with this thematic tone, because Sonic in the movie is more vulnerable and kind of open, because he's younger. He's still kind of figuring out how to become a hero. Not me starting to sing that. But that's why I was like, when they showed they were going to use Shadow, unlike, for instance, at the time where the games were they were like at Sonic Forces, I'm like, I didn't want them to use Shadow because I clearly didn't know how to use him anymore. They didn't know how to use any of the characters in Sonic Forces. They just thought he was an edgy guy that fights and doesn't like being beaten and wants to show he's the strongest all the time. Like, that's not the core of what Shadow is. At the core of Shadow is essentially strength out of pain, essentially being like, he's gone through the worst things out of probably more than any of the Sonic casts. Like I was talking about his story in 06, him learning that one of his potential futures is, despite how he saved humanity time and time again in relation with Maria's wish of letting people make their own choices, letting them live a life of their own, like, volition, let them have the chance to be happy. In spite of all that, in spite of him always trying to save the world, in Sonic 06, he's presented with a future where humanity doesn't care. As they liked him when he's on their side, but the moment they think he isn't, they turn on him and they seal him away again, which is probably one of his biggest fears, because that happened to him the first time for 50 years. And, like, how much time he lost, and also, like, even after all that, even everything he's done, humanity seals him away. And worse, they reprogram one of his best friends to seal him away. That's heavy. That's deep. That's why it's one of the best things. That's why Sonic 06 has its issues. But it has, at very least, Shadow storyline was very good. The other two are fine too. The biggest issue in, like, Sonic storyline is that they try and make Princess Elise very important, but they don't give her enough to do. And we're not going to talk about the thing that happens in the last story with them. We're just not. If you know what it is, you know what it is. We don't need to bring it up in this chat. Silver storyline is also very good. It's very typical time traveler, like Bishop, Cable, and the X-Men, It's very standard fare for time travelers, but that's pretty secure in there, I think. Anyway, but like Shadow's storyline just hits you different because again, faced with this person who's again a guardian at the end of the day, has saved humanity dozens of times, to see that your potential future is that no matter what you do, no matter how much you try and get them to care, no matter how much you do for them, they're going to betray you anyway, and they're going to use like one of your closest like friends to do it, is heartbreaking. And you can tell the thing, who was, I think Jason Griffith was still his voice actor at the time, and he sold it, because even though the animation is a bit janky in Sanko 6, they still do a good job of like portraying, like when Shadow learns the news, he doesn't even say anything, but you just see his whole posture. Like normally he's very uptight and rigid, and he's usually got his arms crossed and stuff like that, but you see him just kind of like loosen up because he's just shocked. You know, like, in spite of everything he's done, he still can't find acceptance. You know? And he's like, you know, essentially from his perspective, he's like, I do all these things, and still at the end of the day, I'm a monster to them. And he struggles with that a lot himself. I mean, you can see that if you watch the Dark Beginnings animated things that comes with Sonic Generations, you can see he struggles with that. Like, he's like, I know I came, and at least in part, from a monster. What keeps me from be a monster? I'm just lucky enough I look like a normal hedgehog, but I'm like, what stops me from being a monster? You know? There we go. What do you think? Her beak's a little big, I guess, but Chica's whole thing is that she has a split jaw, so we're going to do a little bit more detailing to give her a little bit more. Because I got to put the wires on her arms, too. But anyway, but it's a really deep thing. That's why, like, as soon as Project 06 is done, I would love to play it. Because, like, Shadow's storyline is just really well written. That's back when they knew how to use him properly. And the best part also about that scene isn't just the fact that he learns, like, you know, that, again, he might be still the way in the future. Humanity might still hate him and see him as a monster. But at the end of the day, what matters most to him is that the scene doesn't end with him learning that revelation. It's, you know, that's why, again, I don't care how Rouge is portrayed now. Again, used to be my favorite female character. They're still trying to get her better. She's a little too childish now. Like, again, I don't really care for her voice actor. She's just a little ridiculous. She used to be a little bit more serious because the whole idea is that she has this flirtatious nature, but underneath she's kind of like cold hard Black Widow agent. And she's just kind of lost that over time. So hopefully it'll come back slowly as things do it. Like, you know, she used to treat Shadow with a little bit more respect than she does now. Now she kind of treats everyone with a lot of sass, and like, I don't care for that as much. But like, I love Rouge's reaction in that particular scene where Shadow learns, like, you know, essentially his potential destiny is to, you know, put his life in danger again and again to save humanity, and what he gets for it is sealed away for the rest of eternity. Rouge goes and tells him, is like, you know, even if you think the whole world is against you, don't forget that I'll be by your side. Essentially being like, you're not alone in this. No matter what happens, the future is unknown. We don't know what's going to happen next. But know here in this moment, I'm by your side. You're not alone. You're my friend. We're teammates. You know, I'm not afraid of you. And it's something, that's why I like and dislike the line they give in the Shadow Dark Beginnings animated feature, which we watched on stream not too long ago. Because on one hand, I do like the fact that they go and essentially reestablish for the canon, for people who don't know, because again, Maria's only in Sonic Adventure 2. She's not really referenced a whole lot outside of that, which is fine. She really shouldn't be. But it's not part of Shadow's past he likes talking about. But like, they go and point out the fact that, like, you know, only Maria could talk down Shadow from something. And I don't think that's entirely correct. Like, she's the one who understood him the best. Sure, and he definitely loved her most. But I also don't think that he's, like, unapproachable to other characters. That's what I didn't like about the line. Is that it's like, it's brought up that, like, you know, the gun commander asks, like, Rouge, like, why didn't you talk him out of this or talk him down? And she's like, I couldn't have done that. I'm like, no, she could have, because she's done so in the past. There's like at least 3 different situations in previous games where, like, Shadow's like on a ledge where he's about to go tip over again, and she's the one that kind of just yanks him back, and he's like, hey, slow down, I know you don't want to talk about your feelings, but if we're going to jump off a ledge, let's jump off a ledge together. You don't have to do this alone. That's Rouge and Omega as part of Team Dark. That's what makes them so important, because even Omega, who's a robot and pretty much just wants to destroy things, that's also how he finds connection with Shadow. They're both, at the end of the day, built to destroy things and were abandoned by their creators. You know, were meant for a darker purpose that they don't want. And so, they have this really sweet scene with that, like, Omega in the comics, where essentially he goes and be like, I find all organic life useless and weak, except for you two. Like with Shadow and Rouge, he's like, I do find you to be comrades and my friends, and he even says that, like, he actually finds Shadow to be an inspiration. Like, he's like, you're so powerful, you're so small and fleshy and weak, yet somehow you are so strong, both in body but also in heart, and that inspires me. And it's a blink and you miss it moment, but the comics had some really nice arcs for Team Dark, because again, that's I think why we're drawn to the anti-heroes. I'm checking out the chat. Twitch hates me. If it works, I'll chat. If it doesn't, I'll lurk. I'll join chat, but I'm getting ready for an early work. Yeah, I'm just trying to do an earlier one of the day. I was talking to some friends the other day and be like, what time of day is good for you guys to come and hang out? And everyone gave me, like, a different time of day. And they're like, some people are like early morning, and some people are like midday, and some people are like evening. So I'm like, I haven't done an early stream yet. I thought 9 o'clock was a little too early, but I tried to wait until, like, a little after 10, because then hopefully people are, like, awake and aware and stuff like that. But, I'm trying to give different times so I can see when people are most available. Oh, I was like, HD brain. I forgot why it was on my... I looked at my Discord, but I actually was looking for a reference picture of Withered Chica. And I'll make her bib in a minute, but I need to see how to do... Okay. I'm just taking a look at, like, how her jaw works here. Because Withered Chica, the whole thing is that, like, her jaw is unhinged. My stream is just, do I have hours? Do I want to play anything? I know there's, like, probably, like, a science to how to, get more viewers. I don't really know what that is. And I'm just, like, trying to feel, like, how do I get out? Because it's not a matter of even getting viewers. I just want people to talk to. So if I'm in here and there's, like, nothing going on in the chat, I'm just like, I guess I know I have to talk to myself, and then people will really know how crazy I am. Because I will talk to myself for long periods of time if I want to. But I'm like, I'm trying not to look like a crazy person. Okay. So I'm just trying to find times where I can get, like, 1 or 2 people to, like, chat with. That should be long enough. So I'm just trying to find what to, like... You see these streamers who have, like, just, you know, go in chats, and you're just like, don't fall back, buddy. Oh, and you're just like, how do you get, like, that sort of following? I don't want a lot of people. I just want to be, like, maybe just a consistent 5 viewers is the goal, you know? Like, I don't need 10,000 subscribers. We got to 50 once. Getting to 50 again would be nice, but it's, like, just so it would be, like, a rotating, like, you know, I'm not talking... As much as I do love talking to the same person every time, I want to be like, I'm talking to this person today, and that person tomorrow, and this person today, and that person, you know, just some rotations, just so I can have different people to talk to. Not that I'm always fine with talking to the same person, but, like, you know, I like to, I'm not huge on making friends online because I'm a very socially awkward person, but I'm like, I have stuff I want to talk to, and I want to get, and I, like, that's my whole issue, is I have these things I love, and they're like, just do it for you, but I'm like, if I want someone else to be there with me to talk about it. It's friends online. Find streamers who have community I can vibe with. Yeah. That's the thing, really. I probably should start this on the other side of the head. So we're going to kind of trying to go off of this reference photo here. trying to do like a stitching thing on her mouth here. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it with a little bit of silver too. So I'm just... That's what I do when I have to, when I'm like freehanding these designs. Like the pattern's the same, but the actual design is like, you know the basics of how to do shapes of drawing, but now you have to be like, do you know how to make, like how do you turn a bunch of circles into an embryon or something like that, you know? That's the fun part of art, is being like, I know the basics, now how do I turn that into something that looks unique and different? I think I'm just going to go with 2 stitching there, and I'll do a little bit more with the silver. Do what's left over of this red yarn for the wires. Okay. Let's say, I keep trying to... Okay. I try keeping a schedule, then got depressed and obsessed with Veil Card. Hey, that was me trying to run a blog, and then I started playing Star Rail again, and I'm like, oh, hey, 3 weeks are gone. And I haven't posted it all on my blog. You know, I was doing it actually pretty consistently, like 3 times a month for like a month and a half, and then I made the mistake of starting to play Star Rail again. I got into the Third World story, and it was just a rabbit hole from there. A wonderfully enjoyable rabbit hole that made me think deeply about life. But, like, I was like, oh, no. I should have been doing a lot more than playing this video game. That's why I was like, I need to start playing these games on stream, because then at least I'm spending hours on them, I feel less bad about it. You can always go back to it, yeah, I know. I didn't think I need to repurpose how I'm going to tackle my blog. I had a plan in mind. I'm like, okay, realistically, until I get the proper Adderall dose and I can better control my thoughts, I probably need to revise this schedule. That's why I'm hoping to do a, that's why, speaking of projects I haven't done, I need to go look at my backlog list again. That's the whole reason of doing the backlog list, is essentially to have, like, a gaming journal, almost, as I do it. And so I'm like, I have to figure out my games to tackle. And, like, you know, right now, January's lining up to be, I think, January 31st is when my physical edition of Honkai Star Rail will come in. That's probably going to be when I'll do a new account. And that's when I'm going to start doing my, like, I have some video essay ideas for that game. So I'm, like, putting that in my mind. January 31st is when I'll get my physical limited edition, because I'm just into limited editions lately. And I'll start a new account, like a free-to-play account, and then I'm going to start doing, like, some comparison videos between it and Genshin. Again, not in mean-spirited. I actually do it more for the idea of, like, the same reason, like, you watch a show in a retrospective, to see how the developer company has evolved over time. Like I said, I think Genshin's definitely getting better. It's not even close to the same quality, but one game had to walk so the other could run, because they figured out how to essentially run the game and engine and design stuff. In Genshin, they made it so the Star Rail is not an incredibly good game. Like, the fact you can get all this content for free is really amazing. Like, the story in the story even in the first world is pretty good. It's very heartwarming. It's, you know, essentially about, like, you know, the bonds of family enduring against, like, horrible circumstances. Like, it's literally, like, what's that one? Gosh. Is it, like, SnowRunner or something like that? The one where they're on a train that's, like, in an internal, like, blizzard, and only the only people who are alive are on the train. And, like, you have, like, the first class in the front and the lower class in the back who are the hard workers. The first world in Star Rail is literally that, but just, like, on a planet. Where they have, like, the overworld, the underworld, and they're, like, trapped in an eternal blizzard. And, you know, your characters are then thrust in to try and deal with that situation. And I kind of like the fact that, like, you know, by the nature of the Astral Express crew, you're not necessarily there to solve people's problems. You're there to help without asking for anything in return. Is kind of the credo of the Astral Express, is that they go to explore, to build new connections, and, you know, further extend the rails of the Astral Express. They're there to help without, like, interfering too much. So they're not there to solve the world's problems. But if they need an extra push to get them along, then they're there to do that. And so it's especially because at that point you've just gotten the Trailblazer as a character, so this is your time to kind of get to know your crew. And it's just a very good, like, first world, where it's like you have these bonds of family, bonds of loyalty, you know, and the idea of, like, ideals are well and good, but when you've been facing an eternal blizzard for over 800 years, you know, people get tired naturally, you know? You're talking about, like, groups of people who don't even know what the sky is anymore because they've been stuck underground for so long. And, like, for even just the first world story, it had a lot of very thought-provoking things that I've definitely, you know, seen similarly in other JRPGs. But again, free game telling you this story. I have to pay $60 for JRPGs nowadays. I like it whenever I can get some good quality stuff for not a lot of money. And then, like, you know, the other ones, like this, the second world's all about, like, the, you know, is doing the classic Immortals trope. Essentially, is immortality a curse or a blessing? And it's not evenly it's not evenly one or the other, because you're dealing with, like, you know, a community of all long-lived species. So nothing aboard this, like, fleet of starships lives less than 700 years if they're living a good life. Some of them live more than that. And, you know, some of them never die at all, you know, and the differing way that shapes their culture, shapes their rituals, and shapes how they see the rest of the world when they're interacting with, like, you know, foreigners from other worlds who, like, oh, you only live for 60 years? Wow. Some people look down on that, but other people look like they yearn for that. Like, man, I probably would value things so much more. It's kind of like almost like the elves versus human things, like D&D and, like, you know, Tolkien stuff, where you're like, there's just such a difference in mentality, and it's nice to see those two things compare off each other. And again, it has to do with, like, it's one of the homeworlds of one of your express crews, so you have a personal buy-in of knowing this world, this problem of, like, long-lived species of immortality has personally hurt someone that at this point in the story you're very connected to, who's one of your close friends, sort of like brother figure, and you get to see how, like, this potential blessing, potential curse has affected him. It's not just you're going to save someone, you're seeing how this has helped or hurt someone over time. It's just storytelling 101 in a lot of ways, but it's nice to see. Where'd my hook go? Oh, where'd I put my hook? It's an issue with wearing baggy pants. Sometimes you just lose track of where your stuff goes. Where did I put my hook? Am I sitting on it? I know, I've lost my hook. Okay, that's the scissors. That's Chica, that's this thread, that's the other thread. Where'd my hook go? Okay, I just have to get everything off of me and stand up because it's probably underneath me. Okay, continue this rant in a second. Let me figure out where my hook went. It's bad enough I'd lose needles. Did I put it away while I was talking and I didn't realize it? Because I do so many things when I'm talking I don't realize it. Yeah, I mindlessly put it away while I was talking. Go figure. This is also how Madeline gets me to carry her stuff all the time. If I'm talking about something, she can just hand me things and I won't notice I've been carrying it around for 30 minutes. I put it away. Dummy. Because now I need the hook in order to do, I'm doing what they call like a lark head knot, I believe. But it's a good thing to do, like tie things in, especially if you're doing like the mane of something, but I use it to tie these things into like the hands. They have this long, like, it's secure, but it's, you know, not like a knot, so it won't get untied necessarily. Just have to be careful with this yarn because it sheds very easily, so if you pull too hard, you might pull the fuzz off the middle of the yarn, and then that can be problematic. But then you, like, has this nice little knot on the end. And then I can cut it from there as I need to. And we'll put 2 on each hand of the red. And then we'll do, or maybe we'll just do 1 in a blue. pull this one through. As I'm trying just to pull this thing, this thread is shedding. I can't pull it too hard because otherwise it just shreds. Alright, so I got creepy little things there, and then I think I'll cut some of these a little bit. Okay, let's get this on the other hand. I'll get my silver out and we can do something with that. I might use this also. I have a blue here I use for like wires too. I use it like when I do my Shadow Freddy. I use it to do, because he has some blue wires on him, so I might use a blue as well. Try and make a little haphazard though, because again, if the idea these are withered, so they're damaged, so don't want them to look too precise or symmetrical. Do that and I go through both of them. One thing sometimes is you pull the knot, fall all the way through, and then you're like, oh wait, one of those slipped out, so now you have to try and pull it back out without pulling all the fuzz off the yarn. Also, I have music playing in the background just for like me and to give ambiance. I hope that that's not too loud. Okay, looks good. Let's put a little blue on here. And sometimes pulling this through, I just pull like a chunk of fuzz off the ends of these yarns, so it's gonna be a little frustrating. Sheds a lot. Anyway, there we go. She got wires coming out of her hands. I'm gonna put a little silver around her head to show the wires of her jaw coming unhinged. Let's get a little bit more of my silver metal thread here. Our little silver velvet thread we got here. And we'll need the needle for this, because we're back to sewing. Oops. I always forget to start in a different location. Took me a while to figure out how to do, like, you know, lines and stuff like that with sewing. A lot of trial and error processing that I'm just kind of like, I probably could have fast run this if I, you know, looked up a guide somewhere, but that'd be too easy. I'm not going to do stitching all the way around her head because I think that would just be redundant. I'll do enough to give, like, kind of the vibes. Again, these, like, wires that are unhinging in her jaw. Sorry if I just put the microphone there. Hyperfocus activate. Looks pretty good. Okay, let's do the other side of her mouth. That's pretty good. I think I'll use the rest of this to maybe tie another wire off on her one hand. No, you're fine. I haven't been speaking much because I've been super focusing on this. I was activating my hyperfixation mode. So I wasn't really saying much anyway. And we got Withered Chica there. See? We got some. Try and get her back in. So we got some. Got her unhinged jaw here. And then. He's like, oh no, is she quiet? But it's a good quiet. Yeah, so this. We got some like detailing, some wires, extra endosil. And then we got. She's missing her hands. So what I did for this one is like. I just made like. I used what you call backlip stitch that gives you like usually a flat surface. To give like a flat nub on her hands. Now you put some wires. Got some blue wires, some red wires, and the metal wires. I might cut some of these wires a little shorter. At least on this one hand. So they aren't so uniform. But yeah, that's how you do it. That's pretty much how I do when I do any sort of alterations on a FNAF character. I'm like, I just kind of look at what I have and be like, what could I do to make that look like that? That's how I made like my Jacko Bonnie downstairs. But I was looking at it, I was like, you know what, this probably wouldn't be too hard because all I have to do is, I just put some black in the center of her face. I didn't do it all the way around because I don't think it's necessary, but... And then to show like her jaw's kind of unhinged, and this comes in 2 pieces anyway, so just sewing it together like that wasn't too hard. I gave her some more white soulless eyes. And then, you know, have some little, her exposed feet. I'll make a bib for her later. I don't know if I feel like doing it right now. But I also went for like a more like dusty looking yellow to give her a little more thing. So there we go. Withered Chica. Put her back with here. So yeah, that's that one. I'm going to, before I start anything else, I started a beak for my other Chica I'm working on right now. So I'm going to finish that. Because... Nice. I'm glad that she terrifies you. So let me finish first the beak for my second Chica I'm working on. That's a regular colored one. I know anyone can see, but like this is what Withered Chica looks like normally. So I was going for that sort of vibes. If I really want to get detail about it, I could have like alternated some black in her body as I went, but sometimes I feel like putting that much effort in, and most of the time I do not. I think I could put more effort in for like things like that. I did that on my Jacko Bonnie for making it look like he has some exposed metal. And I only did that once. It took a while, and also because I was working double on that one with a orange and then a yellow sunset sort of color that variegated. It took a while, and it was hard on my hands. So, probably will not do that again. But whoever gets him, I mean, be awesome because he looks really cool. I'm like, I'm probably never doing that again because that was a lot of work. So that's why you can say everything I make in some ways. With the exception of a few, a lot of things I make are limited edition because I'm like, I will probably never make that again. But I made it once and it was cool. Unless someone really wants to do it. Like, the Withered ones aren't actually too bad to make because it usually means I'm subtracting parts rather than adding to them. Like the Jacko one I was doing, I had to add a new level of detail. That just takes longer, and it was a little bit more of a hand workout. So that one I probably would not do again. I'm still considering making a Jacko Chica, though. She has a pumpkin. It'll be fun. I had to figure out how to make a pumpkin, though. I imagine it wouldn't be too hard. There's a lot of pumpkin patterns online. But, the Withered ones aren't too hard, because usually it just means I subtract a part, put some extra black somewhere, and then I tie a little, extra threads on them. Where did I put my scissors? So, usually not too bad. I don't mind doing them as much. Okay, so I need to get the second part of this and then connect them together to make the beak. Cool. Alright, so let's see, where were we? Blogs, ADHD. Me not being able to stay on topic. Talking about Star Rail. I will definitely do a Star Rail playthrough. At least, playthrough from the beginning. at the very least, for not my own research purposes of doing like a video essay and like a free-to-play analysis between it and Genshin, I need more people to understand the story so I can talk to them about it, you know? It's so good for a free game. And a gacha game, because again, gacha games are largely sex sells. That's their main point. At least most of them. I was talking about yesterday, I have gacha games and daily login games down to a science at this point on how to do it without spending money. And that's just one game that was like, you log in and you're like, okay, this is pretty good, and then you like get like further into the tutorial area. I'm like, oh no, wait, this is actually genuinely good. And then you get to like the first world, and you're like, no, this is like a legit game quality. Like, I've paid for RPGs that aren't dealing with this level of character development. Then you get to the third world, and you're just like, whoa, that's like Persona 5 levels of like character development for this free game that I willingly will give my money to because I love it. I don't need to, though. I mean, that's the other beautiful thing, is that, like, unlike a lot of gacha games, especially ones that get more power creepy, you have to start, like, pulling for the 5-star characters in order to, like, get to past some of the later game content. And I proudly beat the first 2.5 worlds with only the free characters. And it wasn't even really that difficult. Some fights took a little longer just because you had to figure out the strategy in order to get past some of the harder abilities that the bosses might throw at you, but like generally exploration wasn't like knocked for not having 5-star characters, which is refreshing. Some gacha games are like that, where they'll be like, oh, okay, the free characters we get you aren't as good as our premium characters, but they're functional, so you can use them pretty well. But the other one is like, the other one I'll go and be like, wow, you literally need to have the premium characters in order to even get out of the first world. You know? Those are the gacha games I'm like, get a little bit more tired of faster, is that, because then I'm like, so I have to pay in order to actually, like, Fire Emblem Heroes eventually hit a point, well, their story went off the rails, which was not great for, again, a game knowing that. And then they started getting just, this, Fire Emblem Heroes is like an anniversary title. Like, its whole point is celebrating, like, the history of Fire Emblem. And eventually, like, some point after the after the 5th book, they just started getting obsessed with the original characters that were introduced through the world of the game, which, you know, was fine. You know, you could have your own original characters. The whole point is that we're going to the worlds that are made exclusive to the mobile game. But when it gets to the point when you're giving alternate Halloween, holiday, Easter outfits to the original characters, when the whole point of this game is essentially to be a celebration of the, like, 700 plus characters that exist in Fire Emblem's history, then I think your priorities are out of line. Especially when a lot of characters, especially from the more modern games, still aren't in the game in any capacity. Do we really need a 4th skin for the one boob snake lady we got in book 6? Or maybe can we have, like, more than 5 characters from Engage, the newest Fire Emblem title? Like, its priorities just start to get annoying. Especially because the biggest thing that me and Malik could tell, like, it was on Downward Spiral, is that so that every year they do this, like, Choose Your Legend event. Hey, what up? It's good to see you again. We haven't seen you in a while. I don't think since, like, last week. How you doing? Increase. I was trying to remember what I was doing. Funny thing, once I break my thought process, sometimes my brain will just stop and be like, yeah, last time we did an autosave was like 15 minutes ago, so yeah, we don't remember what you were doing either. Hey, we've been working. That's this time of year especially. I am currently out. You want to see what I just finished? Here's my Withered Chica from FNAF. So I just finished her. She got little wires on her hands, and she's got like a unhinged jaw. So if you know Chica from FNAF, that's what she's from. And right now I'm doing the beak for a regular Chica. Because I started one, and I don't like to leave things unfinished, because otherwise I'll come back and I'll be like, what row was I on? So I'm going to finish this so that I can say this part is done, and then if I want to make something new, I can be like, okay, but that part is done at least. Speaking of which stitch am I on? Gosh. These ADHD things are supposed to be helping me concentrate, and I feel no difference. They start you off small, but I'm like, realistically, my sister, like, needed, like, stronger dose right from the beginning, so I was figuring I was probably going to need a stronger dose right from the beginning, too, so. But they have to start you off small, see how it affects you, and then go from there. Finally got the nerve to go and try ADHD stuff. I think I'm on Adderall right now, but I think I have issues planning and scheduling and keeping to said plans and schedules, so I was like, hey, can you help me with that? I would like to try and get more done with my life. Anyway, so back to Fire Emblem Heroes. So, Fire Emblem Heroes, again, mobile game, which, again, I loved. I played from day one and played religiously every single day for the better part of 4 years. 5 years, maybe? However long the game is. I only stopped playing it earlier this year. Single. Okay, that was an increase, so single. But they had this event, which used to be once a year, and then it was really important when it first came out, like the first time they had the Choose Your Legends, which essentially was like, which character does the fandom love the most, and we'll give you a super powerful version of them. Man, the first trailer character they did was Brave Ike. They're called the Brave Heroes, by the way. You know, like, they're not actually literally called that, but that's, you know, you have to have a way to distinguish the 16 alts of some characters, so you'll be like, you know, this character is also called this character, and, you know, so the Brave versions is what they're called. But you had Brave Ike, Brave Lucina, Brave Lynn, and Brave Roy. And unsurprising that those four got chosen top. It was the top 2 girls and the top 2 boys. And it was funny seeing it the first time. I remember they did a live action trailer for those units. Like, Japanese actors and actresses full cosplayed those 4 characters and did, like, important moments from, like, their, like, stories, like, actually acted them. It was really cool. Just on the edge of cringy, but, like, I was so impressed just because of the fact that I'm like, that's so cool. Again, I've been with Fire Emblem since I've brought before how important it is to me as a franchise. But I've been with it since, like, it's been extremely niche. So any sort of, like, official, like, marketing thing, like a live action trailer, which, you know, they actually played pretty straight, so I thought that's why it worked pretty well. Was actually pretty cool to see. But then, like, as time goes on, you know, like, and so the Brave units are just, like, very powerful units. They have great skills, great abilities. They're essentially built-in kits. You don't have to do a lot of, like, merging or skill inheritance and stuff like that. Like, I was really in the weeds for a while on how to do, like, Fire Emblem stuff in Fire Emblem Heroes. Like, I knew the meta really well. I watched things weekly when characters came out, because that was back when they were releasing characters from the games. Like, I remember my first dream thing of Fire Emblem Heroes was, like, my dream things is first, I want to see Soren in the game, then I want to see Joshua in the game, then I want to see Seth in the game. So Path of Radiance and 2 Sacred Stones characters, because those are my favorite characters. And then obviously I want to see more after that, but those were like my you know, ones I really wanted. And they've pretty much gotten pretty good. Except for Seth. For some reason they hate him in that game. Even though he's a really great character and he's like the strongest unit in his game. Like, there are challenge runs where you use literally just him, because his, like, most early game paladin characters are, like, have bad growths, and he's just like, no, what if I was also the character you can one-shot the game with? Sacred Stones is a fun game to speed one if you want to do it. Okay, which way do I crochet these together? I guess it doesn't really matter. I want there's also, like, this whole thing with crochet, like, right side versus wrong side out, and I'm just like, it's not always obvious which one that is. It's supposed to be, like, a way you can look at the stitches and be like, oh, well, that makes sense. I can't tell that half the time, so let's see. That looks right, I think. Anyway, so Choose Your Legends was, like, the way to get the characters who weren't yet in the game into the game, right? And so it was an important thing for a while. And, you know, most years were pretty cool. And also the cool thing is they got unique outfits. Like, usually about like someone who's important to them. So like it might be like in Lucina's case when she first had it, it was her and her Great Lord promotion, essentially her final class she can achieve in Awakening. But like in the case of like Roy, for instance, which is something they did with several other Great Lords, he was in Eliwood's outfit because his greatest inspiration to him was his dad, and same thing with Ike, he was in Grail's outfit because his greatest motivator was his father. So like they went back and forth with that, and I like that. And like, you know, later on they had like Ephraim and Erika, which were similar. Ephraim was like drudge stuff like his dad and stuff like that. Like they did that for a while, and it was a lot of really good units. And you know, it had some good variety across the games, you know. And I appreciate that. Or then, and even some were like, you know, like potential future, like Brave Camilla, who was definitely my, like, still probably top 5 favorite. Like, I love that outfit. And essentially hers isn't like a, like, you know, like a top class promotion or like a, like, you know, parent thing, because obviously she has horrible parents, as, you know, the Princess of Nor. But hers is like, what outfit will she wear as the Queen of Nor? Like, if you, like, there's a whole big backstory about how Camilla feels about being a princess in the first place, and why, like, she hates being royalty in a lot of ways, because it's caused her nothing but suffering, and more importantly, her entire family nothing but suffering. So seeing her take the mantle of Queen in the Brave unit outfit was really important thematically, and it was more important thematically that she was a healer as a queen, because again, she's like a axe-wielding, magic-wielding Wyvern Knight, essentially like the most destructive unit you can have, with both the overpowered magic and overpowered axes and flight. So she's an extremely strong character. But she's like, she doesn't want to be a destroyer. She wants to love, you know, not even in like a romantic, like she wants to care for people. So the fact that like as a queen, she steps up to the point of being, she's still a very powerful like staff wielder. She can still do a ton of damage as a staff wielder, but the fact that she chooses to heal, because that's what she's always wanted all along. Camilla's a fascinating character in her own game. Problem is, in the mobile games and most appearance afterwards, they did what they did with Tharja, and they'd be like, hot emo lady with boobs. But in her actual context of her game, Camilla's a very fascinating character. All the royalty on both sides are very fascinating characters, and Fate's kind of like Sonic 06 has such potential behind it, but it also definitely fell on its face in some areas. Not really of its own fault. It had a lot of more outside issues than anything, but... So, point to this ramble. Brave units were important. The Choose Your Own Legends banner was important, and then they started doing it 2 a year, and that was pretty cool, but... There was a point where me and Malachi realized the game was just not, like, as good anymore. And we stuck around, mind you, only because of, like, who won that year. But the fact that they released a new character. This was, like, essentially this, like, goddess of time, who has this whole thing with, like, snakes. She has the biggest boobs ever, like, unrealistically for her frame. It's very distracting. She's practically wearing nothing. And when she turns into a snake god, she's just a giant snake with boobs. Why? Who wants this? So, she had been released maybe a week before the tally came up for the Choose Your Legends event. And she won first place for the female half of the division. There are 2 ways to interpret this. One, which I kind of suspected had happened before. The company wanted to promote the new unit, so they rigged it a little so that this unit could win, which I suspected that happened once before. There was a time where, like, not long after 3 Houses came out, they did the Choose Your Legends banner, and all the people who won were from 3 Houses. Not an odd thing, but also just kind of very convenient that when they needed a really good marketing thing to market their new lords from the 3 Houses games, that they just happened to win this once-a-year competition. But then again, that might also be why they won. A lot of people knew them, so a lot of people voted for them, so... But, like, so this snake goddess lady either won because they kind of rigged it, or it really just shows how depraved the fandom has become for this game, that was voted for over literally so many other female characters that are, like, in canonical Fire Emblem games that have, like, lore and character interactions and story about them, as opposed to the snake goddess that wasn't even the story yet, that had been released a week before. And the only reason we kept playing it, which just shows how weak we are as people, is because the one who won the male division was Soren. So I was like, well, clearly I have to play until I see what sort of brave unit he has. And it was what I wanted. It was him in his Archsage outfit, which is like tied with Robin for my favorite like design in Fire Emblem, because they both have really nice coats. Like that looks like the epitome of like magic caster is Robin, and then Soren as an Archsage. Soren as an Archsage is also really important thematically because it's showing like the fact that his like outfit that's been like this whole time in the first game, like Soren was such a good character. I would love to do like a discussion about him sometime. There's a reason like I enjoy him so much as a character. But like, okay, fasten off. But he, like, him as a character was just thematically in so many ways, and that's why I'm like, I was glad to see him be a character in Engage, because I'm like, this is a character that like, do I have enough to sew all the way around on that? Is that gonna be long enough? Just in case it isn't, I'll sew off a long tail, because it's not going to hurt anything. That's the other thing they say, leave a long tail for sewing, and sometimes I leave an exorbitantly long tail, and I have a lot of extra yarn left over, and the other times I'll be like more frugal on the side, and then I'll run out of yarn while I'm trying to sew. So, you can never win is the end of the story. Anyway, so that's Chica's beak right there. That's for my next Chica I'm going to work on. Don't know if I'm going to work on it now, but we'll see. Let me see what my pattern looks like. So much fuzz. But yeah, so, Soren's thing is that, like, you know, he starts as he's a mage, and is unintentionally one of the more important characters in the game. Like, he is, like, one of your, like, tutorial characters, for lack of better things. Like, you always have, like, a paladin character in Fire Emblem that helps your lord along. He's, like, the counterbalance to her. You have someone who's very morally strong and someone who's very pragmatic. So they bounce off each other, and I always love the fact that in Path of Radiance, they never give you the idea of one is right. They both have very good thoughts, and they're both doing it out of a place of concern, even if they don't show it. Soren's kind of a more dour personality. He's got tons of trauma. But, he's the one everyone ships with Ike, which I think is definitely a possibility. Not within the course of the story. Neither of them really... Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn are not romantic games. There's not really time for characters to fall in love, but... And also, again, I would only say Soren's going to be in a romantic pairing with Ike. It would be have to somewhere post Radiant Dawn. Because, again, definitely not in Path of Radiance. And this largely has to do with the fact of, like, in order to be in a healthy relationship, you have to be in a good place yourself, and he is not in a good place in the first game. It's better by the end of the first game, but it isn't until, like, the end of the second game that he's gotten, like, more self-worth and kind of stepped down from hero worship of Ike, that, like, they could potentially be in a romantic relationship. Like, I remember I'd never liked it when I was younger, and it wasn't for the fact of, like, I don't want two guys together. It was more like, neither of them are there right now. They have other things to worry about and other self-worth things to deal with. That I'm like, they're not there yet. They could potentially be a couple later on in life. But it's not until, like, post the second game. And even then, that's still kind of an if. Because they still are growing as people. Which I like. I like a realistic character growth. But the whole point is that so Soren starts out in, like, black robes as a mage in the first game. And then in the second game, he starts out in gray robes, essentially to show, which is kind of like a thematic character thing. Like, this guy's lightening up. He's slowly opening up to more people. He's not as paranoid about, like, everything trying to kill him. Lots of backstory stuff to doing that. And so the fact that, like, his final, like, class is as an archsage is he's in, like, white robes. You know, which still have, like, bits of gray and green in it because he's a wind sage. But, like, I think it's a very thematic moment to essentially show, like, this character has grown over time, has changed over time. The other one who's, like, a lot like that is, like, if anyone who's playing Danganronpa is, like, Byakuya. What is it, Togami is his last name? Is a very similar character in terms of build, like, how they progress. Like, they're pretty harsh and rude to you the entire game, but you can see how slowly they are learning, and the reason, like, they don't know any, in, like, they're harsh is kind of they don't know any better. they've been treated very poorly, so they don't really know how to be better humans, and so they kind of slowly figure it out in their own pace, and they're never going to be kind to you. But the meaning behind their words changes over time to the point where you understand that they like are respecting people, are thinking more of other people. That's something you can definitely tell with Soren. He's a tactician. So in the the very beginning, he's very self-serving, not in terms of him. Like, he works for a company, so it's always about what benefits us. But as time goes on, and he's like, victory at any price, type of vibes. But as it goes on, especially in the second game, you can see his strategy like changes a little bit, and now it's more like we want to win, but we also want to win without losing people. Not because I care, obviously, because he wouldn't admit something like that, but more like, that would be a waste of resources, but it is subtle that, like, over time, realizing that, like, while he's been treated very poorly, there are people who care, even if not, like, on a deep personal level, at the very least, are, like, acknowledging, like, you're a human being, and you don't deserve to go through horrible things. So, like, he is the... Over time. That's why I actually really liked seeing him in Engage, because that clearly is Soren post-Radiant Dawn. And that's why it's like, when the whole thing in Engage is you have the emblems, which are these powerful heroes of Fire Emblem lore, who have now been brought forth in essentially like an almost like deity kind of like state of being, where the emblems were actually very well implemented in Engage, I thought, story-wise, because like on one hand, they are, these heroes of legend, but they're not the same people. They are like a snapshot in time that's been pulled up and put into like another location. So they are those heroes in a way. They have those memories, but they also have existed as the emblems, essentially as like ghosts in a way. So they also have developed their own personalities over time. They like, the interesting thing, like for instance, like Sigurd is one of the first ones you get. He's a knight. He dies a fiery death, but his emblem is aware of that. So he has kind of like a wariness around flames, and he has this sort of melancholiness to him because he knows how his story ends. He did not get the happily ever after in his story. But as an emblem here, he essentially takes on the very strong dad role, because that's kind of what where he left off when, he was a hero. And so he goes in and protects others in that way, and essentially warns against, the things that befell him. But he's not exactly the same person. Marth makes a similar distinction in Engage, where he's like, I'm not that guy. I am essentially this snapshot moment of this person by my own being. I have different thoughts and feelings because I've existed in this world and interacted with different people over time and grown as a person. And I like that they kind of do that with the emblems. And so I like in Engage when they're talking about all the emblems, essentially they're from a mirror world, where the world the emblems in Engage are very classical heroes. They're upstanding and right and true and justice and whatnot. Great batch of things, but then you get another set of emblems from another world that's much more twisted and dark. So the emblems that were needed to save that world, they are more the dark heroes. They're the ones who are willing, all of them have the same thing of they're willing to go to any extent to protect who are important to them. And I mean any extent. Most of them either meet destruction or are very dark versions of heroics. But also that world was a darker world, so they didn't need the idealistic friendship is magic sort of heroes. That world needed heroes who were willing to take risks, who are willing to push the boundaries in order to protect others. Those who are willing to do what needs to be done, even if it's not pretty. That's what the emblems of that world were. And Soren was one of those emblems, because that's how he is. He's not necessarily cruel, but he's also someone who's this is the best case scenario. It's not pretty, you're not going to like it, but this is how we live, with the least amount of casualties. And so I like the fact that, that version of Soren in that one was post-Radiant Dawn. So, he's lightened up a lot. He's still definitely comes off as a very severe character most of the time. But, I like the fact, also it was nice to have voice acting for him, because again, he came from the era before they had voice acting. They didn't have voice acting to Awakening, so I always love when they bring in older characters and you get to hear what their voices could sound like. But I like his version in that one just because Alir is the main character of that game. They're the Divine Dragon, and they're I like how Alir was portrayed in Engage, because they're very much the hero who walks into a legacy, but again, they, classically have amnesia. But the thing I like about Alir, which I think most people don't really respect as much about Engage, because a lot of people are Engage's story isn't very good. I'm No, I think you just have to. Stories are very subjective, and anyone who is going into Three Houses loving Three Houses story, which admittedly can get very convoluted at times, it would make sense that you didn't care for Engage's story. But Engage is much more classic Fire Emblem storytelling. Three Houses is more classic Persona 5 storytelling slash Final Fantasy storytelling. It's a little bit more of a technical world with politics and stuff like that, which is something the Fire Emblem does sometimes, but it generally has the more romanticized side of JRPG storytelling, which is really necessary because most JRPGs nowadays are getting kind of dark and edgy. But the thing that happens with Alear is that they come into it and they wake up and everyone already assumes that they're his hero, but they don't have any memories. So like the way I like that Alear plays it is essentially like, I feel like a fraud. Everyone thinks I'm this great like figure that's going to save them all just because I speak, and they're like, I don't know how to handle that pressure of everyone expecting I'm a hero, and I don't know how to be a hero. It's very classic sort of thing, and like as Alear goes through the storytelling, like they try and be a leader. They try to, give people hope, and they try and trust. And then, like, there's one instance where, like, they're warned, like, don't get too confident. Know when to retreat. And so they go in with blind faith that we are together. We have the emblems with us. We have my friends. We can just beat any force. And they hit a brick wall where they're like, there's a force that they were not prepared to fight, and they should have retreated, and they didn't. And they suffer great casualties because of it. And I like that because, like, I like that they have that problem. That's why, like, some people who say the storytelling in Engage was bad or just poor, I'm like, it's not necessarily doing anything new. It's definitely not writing The Last of Us, but it's like, I think its moments it takes to focus are important moments to do in a hero's journey, which is like, again, Alear has a moment when, like, they go in guns blazing, power friendship is going to solve everything, and then they walk right into a trap. And they should have retreated when they had the chance, and they just thought that they could power through, and that they should follow their heart in every situation. And I like the fact that after that happens, and they essentially suffer a really bad blow, it takes a while for them to kind of, like, first of all, restore their confidence. But then, far later in the story, they're much more cautious. They aren't going to wildly go into a situation when people are like, we have to do something, it's the right thing to do, and Alear will be like, no, we can't. Yes, it is the right thing to do, but we don't have the resources to do that, and we're going to get ourselves killed. So while in my heart, morally, I want to do this, pragmatically, we can't do this because it's going to shoot our chances of actually finishing this war, and I like that character development. It's essentially the thing I wish they did with certain Fire Emblem lords. Definitely Corrin in some instances of Fates, and even in some versions of, like, Three Houses. There are some things where I'm just like, okay, that literally doesn't make sense. But, they had... I just like that building. So, again, once again, to come back to this, the end of this ramble, I'm gonna... Where's the end of this yarn? There it is. To come back to the end of this ramble, so, reason I mention this, so Alear is a character, again, as a lord, who, very hopeful, very, trying to be the hero. So, like, they usually treat emblems, because the emblems can be used like weapons, like they're a force of power, so you can force them to do what you want. They do have a consciousness, so they are a person inside, but, you can force their powers to, like a weapon, and it tortures them, which isn't good, but you can do that, and that's what the enemies does when they steal them, because they're sealed inside rings. And so Alear's thing is like, if I'm going to have, an emblem help me, then, I don't want to force them into anything they don't want to do. So whenever they unlock a new emblem, they'll always be like, hey, will you help me? And they'll ask first. So, funny enough, when Alear goes and finds Soren as an emblem, and then they're like, hey, will you fight for us? And Soren's like, I'm not interested. And they're like, wait, what? And, whenever you have an emblem, you usually have, like, a boss fight in order to, like, win them over to your side. So I like how, like, Soren's whole thing is, like, he's just not interested. He's just like, yeah, you woke me up, and thanks for doing that. It's better not being trapped inside a bracelet, but I'm not interested in your like little happy quest you got going on, which I thought was just very funny. And so they come to essentially a deal where essentially like Halir essentially just kind of wears him down and says like, okay, fine, you're this great strategist and everything. If I can beat you in combat, will you at least hear me out? Like what I want from you. And he's like, okay, fine, but you're not going to because I'm a very renowned strategist. And so Lear's like, okay, fine, then we'll do it your way. So they do fight, and they do manage to, obviously you as the player do manage to defeat him. And so, Soren's a little surprised because he's a very capable strategist. But as promised, like he won't, like that's the other thing is that like he's severe, he's kind of a jerk, but also he doesn't go back on his word. He's like, okay, fine, you beat me, what do you want? And Alir is like, I just want you to like fight for my, I just want you to give your knowledge and your power, to my cause, because we need some help, And so Soren's like, okay, but you're not, and then he essentially like, the whole thing is that he's a very pragmatic strategist. So like, his whole thing he points out to Alir is essentially like, you don't want my help. You are a happy-go-lucky lord who wants to see the best in people, and he's like, and I don't judge you for that, but you don't want my help. I'm going to tell you things that you're not going to want to hear, and I hate wasting my breath, so I'll give you a way to out of a situation. You'll think I'm trying to be cruel, and you'll just ignore what I say, and I don't like wasting my breath. And so Alir's like, Alir's like, oh, that's not true. I would listen. And so, Soren gives a hypothetical, like, essentially there's a, he's like, what if we were in a situation where, like, we had, like, I once gave a ruling of, like, we had a hostage, and we had the option of either holding onto the hostage and protecting her by having to fight an army, or giving up the hostage and then getting paid for our efforts. And he's like, my ruling was to give up the hostage immediately, because we didn't have the manpower in order to defend ourselves. And so he's like, would you have made, like, that's the ruling I would have made. How would you have felt? And, Alir obviously being the hero is being like, well, obviously I would have said protect the hostage because, that's how they are. But at the same time, they also go and say, they're like, but he's like, but Alir also admits, he's like, but I also see where you're coming from when you're saying this. He's like, your opinion is also very valid. And I think because at this point, this is Alir who's like learned that, war is difficult sometimes. And so he's like, I also see where you're coming from with your opinion, though. And so Lear's like, I actually need someone like that who will tell me the harsh truths. And that gives me a better way to lead my army and make sure that we get out of this alive. And he's like, I might not always agree with you on how you decide on how to do strategies, but Alir's like, but I still will want your opinion so I know the options, and then also make sure that I'm not looking at this through an idealized lens. I need someone to tell me when I'm wrong, which is important, especially as a leader. You need someone who will tell you when you're wrong. And so, after that, they have the discussion, and then that's when Soren's like, okay, then I'd be happy to work with you. Which, again, is something more important from his, like, Radiant Dawn version, is that he's willing to work for other people now. But I like the fact that, like, and also Soren kind of respects that as well, because he's like, essentially he's like, you're idealized, no doubt about that, but he's like, but you also have very strong convictions. And he's like, I can get behind that, He's like, of course he has to give the caveat, like, don't think we're going to become friends or something. But he's like, but I can respect a leader who's willing to admit that they don't know everything. He's like, and if you actually are willing to listen, then I'll be happy to, make strategies for you. And then, that's how you get him as a character. Which I think is, that doesn't look quite right. See, when you're trying to freehand items sometimes, like I'm trying to do right now with this bib, you'll, like, do it and be like, that doesn't look right. Because I remember how I made the bib for her last time, so I'm just kind of like, because this pattern doesn't have a bib in it, so I'm just kind of like freehanding it and being like, this probably looks right. It's going to look more like a bandana, probably. It's not going to look quite like a bib, but that's fine. It's a little pointy, but I guess it's not too bad. But yeah, so I like it when they keep characters in character like that. So, because, like, you know, reasonably appealing to, like, heartfelt gestures and sense of justice would not work with a character like Soren. That's why I like the fact that they played it in the fact that Alir was essentially being, like, more logical about it and being like, yeah, I admit I don't look at the world the same way you do. I have much more trust in people. But he's like, but Alir's also like, but I also think that having all the opinions, hearing what everyone has to say, and realizing that I have my own ignorances, it makes me a stronger leader. Which is why, like, ultimately Soren's like, okay, then we can do this. I'm willing to work for you if you understand that. And then also afterwards, you go and reveal to him that, like, oh, hey, we also have Ike in our party, who's, like, you know, the one person, like, Soren swore loyalty to since, like, the very beginning. So then he's like, I would have joined you right off the bat. You just told me you had Ike with you. But it's funny. Anyway, point being to that ramble, I hope people are keeping up at home. There's going to be a test on this later. I hope people are keeping up at home with where these rambles are going. The reason I bring this up is back to what I was saying about gacha games earlier. So, characters have, like, gosh, I need a lot more. Characters have, like, a certain, like, personification, Fire Emblem games. And so, like, when you show them in another context, that's fine. It's okay. I'll curve it. We'll give a strong curve. Especially if you say something really nice about me at the end of the test. But, all this to say, the whole thing I was saying about gacha games before, so I stayed along long enough for them to, like, show Soren his Arcee's outfit, because that's how I think he's, like, I like that outfit the most. But the problem was that Fire Emblem Heroes started to get less concerned about, like, cameoing characters from the past, and, like, showing, like, oh, this is a great celebration of the Fire Emblem history, and then it started to become about, no, we just have to do our own original characters, and we're going to put them in, like, bathing suits and stuff like that, which is fine. I really liked some of the bathing suit outfits. But, like, it started to get so much about the new original characters and not so much about the, like, characters I actually cared about that I just stopped playing. Because I'm like, I don't even... And I have, mind you, like, 900 currency in that game. I could, like, get any character I want easily. Like, for months. They hand out a lot of currency in that game. But I just stopped playing because I'm like, you guys aren't really caring as much about, like, the actual Fire Emblem characters. Now it's about these original characters that, honestly, are very shallow and not well developed and only exist within this mobile game, which, mind you, is a mobile game, and most gacha games aren't exactly trying to make a lot of, you know, aren't exactly trying to have highbrow storytelling. So, like, they're underdeveloped, they're really only there for sex appeal, and, like, again, we're in a game that's supposed to be a celebration of Fire Emblem's history in a wide variety of characters. So the fact that they had, like, this game just kind of, I think, lost its heart in a lot of ways. And so I stopped playing it. Because, you know, a lot of gacha games get that way eventually. Usually it's power creep. But I was willing to put up with power creep as long as they were still, like, bringing, like, good characters to the table. But then when they're like, okay, now we only really care about, like... The biggest thing that got me is, like, when Engage came out, like... When Three Houses came out, they released a lot of, like, banners that had the Three Houses characters, because those are the ones everyone loved, and so people were up for that. And, like, even to some extent with Shadows of Valentia when that one came out, and then Three Hopes. But when Engage came out, they were, like, forgot that it existed, because for some reason there was, like, no banners for Engage characters. I'm like, what? Now she has a little bib. Now she looks so cute. Again, freehanding this, so I could have probably made it a little longer, but it's fine. With a Chica. I was originally going to start something else. I'm like, I honestly should do that bit before I forget. Anyway, anyone want to see my big noodle dragon I'm working on right now? Put you over there. Get some of these fuzz off my pants. So, I don't know, I just stopped playing it. So, the point of this whole thing to say, like, as I'm here for yaps. So, the whole point I get to that with gacha games and why I stopped playing Fire Emblem Heroes is, like, eventually it just became so much about, like, again, the original characters that no one really liked, And they kept bringing in characters from, like, the older games, like the really old games that haven't been translated. When there's, like, again, Engage was the newest game, and I think maybe 10 characters out of its, like, 40-some cast have appeared in the game in the last 2 years. But you better believe we have the 4th swimsuit for this other random original character who's really just there for sex appeal. And I'm like, okay, I don't care about these characters. I don't know these characters, so therefore I don't want to spend my money on these characters, you know? Which at the end of the day, every gacha game is about gambling and spending money to get characters. And so I'm like, the best gacha game formulas are the ones that make you care about the characters and aren't like, because power creep will happen to every gacha game sooner or later. So it's all just a matter of like how long it takes for it to creep in. But, like, if you care about the characters, then you're going to get them regardless of whether they're good or not. However, you're trying to get the next big damage dealer. Well, there's always going to be a next big damage dealer. I heard in Genshin that happened recently, like, for a while, like, you have, like, D-Luke in the beginning. I think it's a cool character. Wish I knew anything about him, because you literally start Genshin and he's like, hey, this guy who's a bartender. I think. I don't know, he talked to Kaya once, and they seemed to hate each other, but I assume that was just the fire-ice thing, and then they're like, and now he's helping us fight a dragon. Don't know why, since he was just introduced as a bartender, and then later on you're like, oh yeah, he's also one of the richest guys in town, and you're like, that would have been nice to know. Also, I still don't know why he's helping us. I'm like, the Night Lady is helping us, because she's trying to protect the town, but I'm like, I don't know why D-Luke's trying to help you, because I'm like, I guess he's also trying to protect the town or something, but, like, if they don't explain it, they kind of just are like, he's there, now we're gonna go fight a dragon. I don't mean to beat up Mondstadt, but how do you make fighting a dragon boring? It's a dragon! It shouldn't be hard. Speaking of dragons, I need to look at my pattern, because I need to see where I left off. I think I'm on, like, row 67 of this dragon at this point. Such a long body. Okay, what row did I leave off on? I left off on row 56. Anyway. But, like, they have D-Luke, who's apparently, like, a strong fire character, but then, like, you know, people liked him and stuff like that, but then they had, like, what, the other lady, like, Arlecchino or whatever it is, the one who sounds like a coffee drink. The lady with the black and white hair and the red scythe thingy. I love the ways they keep trying to cheat the weapon system they put into place, and, like, we're trying to give some character variety, even though we know it's just another person with a sword. Man, too many swords in Smash. That was the funniest thing for a while. Fandoms are so fickle. But, like, apparently he got totally outmoded by her, so it's like, it's always a matter of time before you get power crept. So I'm like, you have to really care about the character in order to want them. And also not having too many characters helps. You release too many characters too fast, especially of, like, the lower quality, which is definitely something Fire Emblem ran into later. Then you never know when to pull, and so you just stop pulling on things. But if you have, you know, characters that are distinctive enough that they're doing different roles, then you can be like, okay, I'll try for them. Or like in the case like when I'm playing Star Rail, like the last 2 characters I pulled for because I love their story. They're also really good characters in terms of like units, like they're powerful. But I also got them just because I'm like, I love them as characters, so I wanted to own them and I wanted to go around with them and I wanted them to text me and, you know, stuff like that. The different events you can have. So this is I call it like my noodle. It looked like a Cheeto. It looked like I originally just had the head, but this is my dragon I'm working on. Long body dragon. I think I have one more hump of his body, but... So, it's with this big twist yarn. Very plush. It's also got a lot of spring to it. It's very... has a lot of squish to it. It's like Burnett, but not quite as stiff. And it does break a little easier, so you have to make sure you don't yank it too hard. I've definitely broken it by having too much tension in my hands before. But yeah, so you can see there's face here, whiskers here. But like, obviously it doesn't look like a dragon yet because I haven't added like the horns, the frills, the legs or anything. But this is all one solid piece, which is the biggest problem, is most of the time you sew together things like this. And I'm like, you're supposed to work in one piece, so it's very long. And I remember this hump here, I took all day. Sorry if I keep banging the mic, this thing's big. I took all day trying to do this one hump, and I kept trying to do it the way the pattern told me to, and I could not get it to look right. So eventually, after like the third time, because crochet, you can crochet and pull it out, and then crochet and pull it out. It never really bothers the yarn as long as the yarn doesn't like shed. This yarn also, Big Twist, doesn't shed at all. So that's nice. But I spent what was supposed to be an hour trying to fix this one hump on the body here, and I spent all day, at least 8 hours, trying to do it the way the pattern said. And eventually I'm like, you know what, screw that. I'm gonna go, I know how I made this hump. I'm just gonna do how I did this hump, make it on this hump, hope it doesn't screw up the pattern later. But I'm like, trying to do it. It's gonna be, the one I made before, Malian says, was like my Nouvellette dragon. Didn't look like him, but like it had that color scheme with like the dark blues. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a bad adjustment in terms of like the yarn's easy enough to work with, and the pattern is not too difficult. It has this, it's just like trying to do these things that like transition like this. Normally, if you have pieces that like twist like this, you'll bake in different pieces and sew them together. This is the first time I've seen a pattern that works in one continuous thing. So the biggest thing is just I have to like flip the whole thing over whenever I go in around because it's so big at this point. So that's the bigger difficulty actually when working with this, is that it's just big at this point. It's worked with an 8 hook, so that's why the stitches are big, but also this is just a very poofy yarn. It's very soft though. Because I was saying before, I made a one for that was kind of like an ice dragon. Malian thought it looked like Nouvellette, so we started just calling it our Nouvellette dragon. He did sell at a show. I wouldn't mind keeping him, but I put him up there for $75, and someone wanted to pay that, so I was like, oh, okay, then I hope that they love him. It's because I gave him kind of the way I did the spines down the back, I used this fuzzy yarn, and it had kind of like this wisp at the front, and she's like, that looks like Nouvellette, and I was like, oh, yeah, I guess it does. It wasn't intentional, but yeah, I guess it does. So then I did a couple more, and I gave him little eyebrows, so he looked a little bit more like him. And it was also like had the same dark blues, light blues, like silvers in it. So after doing that, with the knowledge of that, this one is an Eastern dragon. I was trying to think about what sort of colors to do. So this is going to be kind of like a Rex Lapis dragon at the end of the day. I don't know entirely what it looks like outside of I've seen plushies. Like, I don't know what Zhongli's, like, dragon form looks like. I can very strongly guess, just based on what I know about Eastern dragon lore and, like, what they tend to look about and what sort of traits you put on a dragon in order to show its royalty. But, like, I'm going to assume we're going to talk about something that probably has antlers, probably has a mane, and most likely 5 fingers. 5-finger dragons are ones that are royal. Believe it or not. Does depend on how many fingers they have. Usually are seen holding like crystal orbs too, or some sort of like jewel of some sort. But so this was the one I was like, I originally started this with the idea of like, I'll get this done before he comes back into focus as a character, and then it sat on my bed for months because I got stuck on that one hump. So it's not done before he got back and thing. But the important thing is, maybe it's because I have my dragon in here. I did get Zhongli pretty easily. I haven't got Nouvellette yet, but they did just have a live stream last night, so it means I get 300 extra currency. That should be enough to at least pull like one more time and try and get Nouvellette after that. But we'll see. I should hope so at least. I'll try and pull on that later. So what do I need to do next? So this is kind of like my Rex Lapis dragon here I got. So that's why the body's brown, because clearly Eastern dragon have long bodies, which is an interesting thing to do, especially for an earth dragon, because Eastern dragons are usually associated with water, namely river systems, because those are the like sources of light. Eastern dragons are usually associated with, like, you know, obviously wisdom, very long lives, wealth, good luck, and usually water. So it's interesting that, you know, again, well, it more makes sense because they're in the clearly Chinese region, but just based on how the characters' names work out. And the fact that everyone's name has to have an X in it somehow. So who knows how to say half the names in that region. But it took me a while to even figure out how to pronounce Liyue, and the only reason I know that is because I heard someone else say it when I was watching cutscenes of the game in the Sumeru area, and someone mentioned it. I'm like, oh, that's how you pronounce that. Because you look at it and you would not... I love looking at names and being like, who knows how the heck you pronounce? That's why I called just Nuvalet, like, water dragon god for a while because I did not know how to pronounce his name. And then I heard a voice line. I'm like, oh, okay. So this is one word is actually pretty close to how it's spelled. Still crazy name to try and spell, but at least it does look how it's spelled. 56A. Oh boy. So essentially what you do with these ones is you kind of do like a stair step back and forth in order to do the curve. Which is a pain. Okay. Okay, so I need to do 12. Alright. We'll do this, and then maybe it'll be crooked, and I'll have to go back and do it again. So, let's hope I don't lose my sanity trying to work on this thing again. 1, 2. I don't know what's worse, Chinese names or French names, honestly. Because you look at, like... I like that they gave, like, 2 of the prominent regions in Genshin, like, distinctive accents, and just kind of were like, eh, for all the rest of them. 6. 7. 8. Although that's kind of more of an issue with voice acting across the board, because I remember when we were, like, playing Pokemon. First of all, Pokemon needs to have voice acting at this point. They've been... It's just... The fact that they're doing full-on cutscenes with sound effects... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yet they don't have voice acting at this point is just kind of ridiculous. Especially when they have characters that, like, rap and sing, and you're like, you know how ridiculous this looks that you're not... And that you don't have voice acting, right? That you have a character that's supposed to be a singer and there's no voice acting. Not even any, like, thematic music. You know how stupid that looks, right? And then they did one worse in Paldea, where they have a character whose whole thing is being a rapper. Do you know how ridiculous rap sounds when it's not spoken? It sounds ridiculous when it's spoken half the time, too. But you know how much more ridiculous it sounds when it's not spoken? And it's just a text box? Like, that needed voice acting. That really needed voice acting. And all the emotional moments you have at the end of the game, like, you can hear all the other sound effects, like explosions or Pokemon calls or whatever, but no voices whatsoever. You didn't even have to go all the way. You could have either done the awakening trick of you let the character occasionally say a word, or just give, like, an intonation of some sort, but they don't say the whole voice line. Just to give an idea of what the character's voice sounds like and what their intonation is like. Or you could do like Balan Wonderworld did it and be like, they don't actually speak a language, or even Monster Hunter Stories did the same thing. They don't speak a language, it's not a language you understand. But you can clearly tell there's an intonation there. There's, like, you can tell expressiveness, you can tell tone of a scene, even if they're speaking their own unique language, you know, like, you can go either way. But Pokemon needs to do voice acting. They really need to do voice acting. But I bring this up because Galar is, like, so British. And the fact that, you know, like, people are, like... In Pokemon Masters, they have voice actors. Like, and the funny thing is that, like, again, some of them, they have good British accents. Some of them are clearly not British people trying to have a British accent because they only have it on, like, every 5th word. And you're like, that's just disorienting. Okay. 24. I hope I didn't start this in the wrong part of the body, but we're going to see in a second here. 1, 2. Question in chat. What is the most annoying accent to get wrong? Like, I think probably, like, a British accent is up there, like, a poorly done British accent, or a British accent that you're not 100% committing to, can be very annoying to listen to. What do you think is, like, the worst accent to, like, either fake or not go all in on? And, like, we're talking about, like, not necessarily, like, you know, like, hard to understand or you don't like that accent. Because I can't do accents either. But I'm like, for instance, if I was, like, to, jump tracks from it, Dragon Quest XI, I really respected. Because every region has its own accent. Because they each have different cultures. So you have the one area that's very, like, higher European. But then you also have, within that, you have, like, the Cockney accents, you have the posh accents, like, you have variety of British accents. And you have the one area that's Scottish. you know, then you have the one area that is Spanish, so they all have different ranges of Spanish accents. And you have even the people underwater have this sort of thing where like they have like a watery intonation to their voice, and they all speak in rhyme. Like, that's cool. The Thief's guy's accent. Yeah. I don't know what his accent's supposed to be. He's from a like area that's like Norse. And the funny thing is like well, I do like, that's what I agree. I think Eric's accent is great because of how they use it storytelling wise. He has a stronger accent at the end of the game, and that's because in the beginning of the game he's trying to hide it, that he has an accent. By the end of the game he's more willing to like admit where he came from, and so his accent is more obvious. Yeah, again, it gives me a Scandinavian vibes, but again, it is an accent. It's just, you know, what character? When I'm playing Star Rail and I'm listening to Dr. Ratio, I'm like, you have an accent. I don't know which one it is, but you definitely have an accent, and I can't place what it is. You know? It's kind of like Dr. Ratio's accent is kind of British, but it's not really. It's definitely European. But it's like, it's a way he rolls his words that it's like, it's definitely an accent. And it's also the way he measures, like, certain syllables. So it's like, it's one of those things where you're like, you want to just go and be like, okay, this character clearly has an accent. What accent is it? And that's the way I felt about, like, with Eric's accent in the beginning. Because at first I thought his voice actor was just being inconsistent. But then after playing through the game twice, well, playing through the game, New Game Plus, and then playing it on the Switch, so technically 3 times, I came to realize, like, no, his accent comes out more when either he's being more open and honest, or when he's more emotionally hung up. He only hides his accent when he's like more level-headed and controlled. And namely, like, for instance, when he loses his memories for a while, his accent's a lot stronger because he doesn't know he's hiding it. So I do like thematically they did that. That's smart to do. But like, yeah, his accent was definitely one of those ones where I'm just like, there's an accent here, I think. You know? So yeah, the area is supposed to be like, well, because the biggest thing is also when you go to his, like, hometown and you hear the other people talk, you're like, oh, that's the same accent. I still don't know what accent that is, but they all talk like him. So clearly he's from this area. So sometimes you don't necessarily need to know what an accent is, but you can, like, that's the thing I like about Dragon Quest XI, is that you can tell which location someone is from. You can't always tell what accent they are, but, like, you can, when you, like, you hear Savando talk, and you can tell he's from, like, the one port city, because they all talk similarly. Like, they have a similar accent. And also because he's not being very subtle about the fact that he has history there. But I'm like, and also he does a lot to change his voice as well. But, from what he probably sounded like normally. But, I think they do a good job of using voice acting to tell stories about the characters, which I think is what the best voice actors should do. And the mermaids rhyming, yeah. Different talking cadences. That's actually something I remember, 1, 2, 3. That's something I remember, rhyming, when done well, can actually be a very interesting storytelling thing. So, like, the mermaids, I like the fact that all the undersea creatures talk and rhyme. But, like, when you hear it, like, for instance, like, sometimes it can be annoying. But I like how, like, the mermaid queen does it very effortlessly, so it doesn't feel distracting. It's like, no, this is just the way they talk down here. And, again, it shows their culture. You feel, like, a little different because you're not quite on that same vibe as they are. So, I do like that. And then the other one I liked, which they didn't do as much because they didn't have as many voice lines, but, like, something that they did a little bit in Battle Wonderworld, but mostly in the book, was, in the book, they have a thing where, Balin himself, he's the maestro of, Wonderworld, Knight's character, we've played it before, he speaks in rhyme, and so he does his counterpart, like, enemy, Lance. He speaks in rhyme, but the way they do it is actually kind of almost like a looser rhyme. So it means that he can actually say some pretty sophisticated things, and sometimes you don't even catch the rhyme until you get to the end of the line, and then you're like, oh. The reason that he has that is he has this, again, he's a theater maestro, he's a performer, it gives him a very lyrical way of speaking. So he's actually, and the funny thing is actually for the majority of, like, in the book, I like the way the Balin's played, because, like, on one hand, you know he is technically the good guy, the one you're trying to help, in that world, like he's the positivity of Wonderworld that's currently being overrun by negativity, and so you're there to help him. I like in the beginning though, like he's very sassy. Like he's there to facilitate you saving the world. He's not there to help you though. And half the time he'll call you out for like doing something stupid. Or be like, you know, like you'll have to fight, like there's this like chapter in the beginning when you like first meet him in the book where he like, you know, the main character is learning how to fight enemies, and he can essentially punts you off a cliff with the ability to fight and says, "Good luck. I'll be back soon." You know? Hey, what's up? Spider-Man. Nice. Welcome to our discussion on accents. I only played Dragon Quest IX previously. I love how they did the world. That's also something that Dragon Quest across the board does pretty good with their accents. Is that regardless of whether they are 10, regardless of what accent it is, they do a good job of being like, this is this area's way of speaking, even if it's just intonations. And then, like, you know, there's that one, like, a monastery place. And their whole thing is, like, they speak in, like, haikus in that area. We're discussing just accents in general and voice acting in video games and how you can use that for character telling. So I'm also crocheting a dragon. So there's that too. But he'll be a dragon eventually. We're working on that. I did a FNAF Chica earlier. This is Withered Chica from FNAF. But like how if you have a character who has an accent, it might say something about the location they come from, or they might be like, the character we were talking about earlier is a character that like hides their accent in the beginning of the game because they're trying to hide where they're from, but then like later on in the game, they speak more naturally in their natural intonation because they're not as, you know, insecure about where they came from. So, you know, accents can tell a lot about character if you want to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's what I thought. So, just discussing that. And, you know, but also at the same time, bad accents or horrible. So, I was also asking into the chat, like, what type of accent do you hate, like, hearing when it's done poorly? You know? Because I need to count for a minute. So, consider that, chat. 18, 19... This 20. These plush yarns sometimes are a little hard to tell where the stitch spots are. 21. 22. I have to throw this thing around whenever I go around in a row. 24. I think I did that. Good. Crap. That's why I don't take the stitch marker out until I get, like, the row done, because sometimes I start and be like, this will be fine, and I'll be like, nope, that's off a little, so I need to move, like, 5 stitches down. Let's start here instead. Okay. Because I think, like, you know, obviously I was talking about, like, I think British accents, when done poorly, there's, like, such a wide... You know what's funny? American accents. What the heck is an American accent? I've been told... I live in the South. I'm in North Carolina. So we're like, the north of the South. But you still have a lot of very southern, bless your heart, accents down here. And it's funny, I had someone tell me I had a northern accent, and I'm like, I really don't think I do. And also, what is a northern accent? Are you talking, like, New Jersey? Are you talking New York? Are you talking Ohio? Like, every state in the United States is arguably its own, like, country in a way, so they all have their own different dialects. And technically, we're all speaking English, for the most part. But the, like, American accent. What is an American accent? Is it a lack of an accent? Like, you know, just on the East Coast alone... There's a great difference between a New York accent versus, like, a Southern accent. I feel like it's just that you don't have a Southern accent. Well, yeah. Olivia, who's my youngest sister, she has more of a southern twang to her because she grew up her formative years here. So it's not even like an accent. It's more like she just drawls some words, like hearing her say treadmill. She'll say treadmill, you know, and stuff like that. And you might just say y'all a little easier. But like, we actually say y'all more like a joke around here because we're like, we are not southern. Yeah, that's why I was like, someone said I had a northern accent. I'm like, I don't think I have a northern accent. And I think it's because I lived in Pennsylvania for like until 10, and then I lived in California until, you know, like for 2 years, and I lived here. But even then, I'm an autistic individual. So I will mimic things. I don't really speak in a certain way, though, like on my own. I just speak myself. So I'm very monotone most of the time. I might get, like, you can tell when I'm talking about stuff, I get a little more passionate, but, like, I don't have a lot of expressiveness in my voice. I'm a lower register voice. So, you know, there's that too. But, like, I remember, like, when we used to play D&D, if Meredith was doing a British accent, I would start talking the same way she does. So, like, I can do vaguely British. Don't know what part it is. That's like Madeline with her character Bing Bong, and she's like, vaguely European. It's a Bing Bong accent. We don't know which kind of accent it is. 5, 6. Give me a second. 7, 8, 9, 10. Go from there. But it's like, it's vaguely European. And it actually more has to do with the way that she, like, again, accents are that's why I'm impressed with people who can do, have a wide range of voice acting abilities. You know, Tara Strong, for instance. Like, Matt Mercer, too. Who's the other one? Xander Mobius. The fact that he can play both, like, Joker and, like, the announcer on Smash Bros. And the conductor, who's very Scottish, and A Hat in Time is, like, pretty impressive. But, because accents aren't just, you know, how you roll your words necessarily. They're also, like, where you take your pauses, you know? I remember I was writing a story for Danny for, like, a kind of a gift art, like, a gift story, because he got me some gift art. And I'm like, well, this inspires me to write a story. So I wrote a thing, and his character, who was in that thing, has a strong German accent. So I literally, if there's one thing to speak an accent, it's even harder to write an accent. You usually just have to say they have it and just trust they do. Because with the exception of a couple, it's very hard to write an accent. So I, like, researched heavily how to write a German accent and, like, what consonants you, like, lose or gain, where you slur words, where you accent them, and then how to write that, like, phonetically. Writing accents is a pain. But, the best I'll do is that I'll clip words sometimes, but, like, to show the character maybe, like, speaks faster. I did that with my character, my, Tempest, in the Chronomancer series I wrote. Really like that one. I love dealing with time shenanigans. But, like, the best thing I did is originally I was like, okay, I just clipped all her words because the idea was that she's moving so fast. She's a time traveler, so she's used to time moving around her rather than, you know, her moving through time. So, like, she speaks fast and she clips words. And then my friend read it. It's like, oh, she have like a tea and kettle accent, like a British accent. I'm like, that wasn't what I was going for, but sure. If that's how you read it, sure. She can be British. Also, time travelers are usually British. We can blame Doctor Who for that one, but time travelers are usually British. Also, we can just kind of blame the Victorian era. I was talking about the Victorian era the other day, and being like, what a fascinating time in history. It's kind of like the Old West for America. Like, it's a time in history where, like, you know, it's a time capsule for certain kinds of stories. Like, I was talking about Black Butler the other day, very briefly, because I started reading it, and I made a character vaguely based on the butler in that game. And I was thinking about, like, the fact that, like, man, Victorian England really does build itself well for murder mystery stories because of the nature of the time. And it's because of, like, the protocol, almost. The, like, the trappings of society, the standards, so you can actually get away with, like, having a demonic butler because of, like, you're in the time period where people, like, questioning things is, like, frowned upon as, like, bad manners, and bad manners is the one thing you never want to have in this society. And granted, it is overdone because it is fantasy. But I like the fact that, like, the amount of things that they can get away with, that they shouldn't get away with, or people should be questioning in this era is impressive, but also that's why it's set in Victorian London. You know? This is an era about status and appearances and, like, properness and stuff like that in tradition. So you can get away with a lot that people are not going to question because it's improper to question. How the heck your, you know, very handsome butler is getting away with things that literally are borderline magic and people just don't question. Like, oh, must be a very capable fellow. I'm just like, this is also why the Doctor gets away with everything, is that people just don't question it in that time period. So it is funny to watch. That's why I like reading the first volume of Black Butler was funny, because I'm like, this is a very humorous series just because of the nature of what's going on and the fact that no one questions what's going on. 1, 2, until you get to the darker stuff, but you know. In order to do truly dark things, you have to have a lot of comedy. Or at least something to lighten the scene, because otherwise you get into the grimdark area, or like the, you know, like the hopeless apocalypse area, which is kind of like where something like Attack on Titan sits. And those are just harder buy-ins for me, because if I know that ultimately everyone's going to die, why should I connect to your characters? Let me finish counting, and then I have this thing to say about that. I did briefly watch Attack on Titan. It has an amazing, like, theme song. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Good. Flip the noodle over again. I'm, like, practically wrestling with this thing. But, like I've said before, the way I view stories is kind of like a handshake between the reader and the author. It's like they're essentially saying, like, in turn for, me being vulnerable with you and giving you the story, I ask that you don't question it till the end. I ask you to suspend your disbelief. And the reader agrees, because they're like, yes, I assume that you are going to show me something I've not seen. Or you're going to take me on a journey, or you're going to give me some sort of escapism, you're going to make me feel something, you're going to make me think. And I trust you to do that, so therefore I will suspend my disbelief and I will become immersed in your world. Obviously, when this handshake agreement is not maintained, and you have a lot of, like, right now in movies especially, we have a lot of, like, lampshading, meta humor. Not willing to, the author is not willing to be vulnerable with the audience becomes cynical, they are less likely to give you their suspense of disbelief. They're more willing to go and question and tear apart your story. Cause and effect things. It's amazing sometimes, you know, like, as an autistic person, I can't catch social cues, and I don't quite understand how people work most of the time. But it means I'm really good at analyzing things, and I'm really good at patterns, and so I'm good at looking at things from, like, a hypothetical state of mind. But, like, this is why storytelling is so fascinating to me. It's because so much thought goes into it. Everything can be a choice. And the fun thing, like, I think it was a Neil Gaiman quote, is like, when you build up a properly good world, even if you didn't make a choice, if people draw conclusions that you never made, you have the wonderful thing of having, you know, looking like a genius. You know? You can be like, oh yeah, that was totally what I meant. I totally was supposed to go and do that. You know, like, I made this world, and this might be an area that the readers will never stumble upon. But if they do, I can say I thought ahead, and it was informed. You know, like, I do a bit of DMing. I have spoken about at length in my last stream, when we crocheted together, I think on Wednesday, about the conductors, my personal favorite characters right now I have in my campaign, 5. And I talked about, like, the amount of lore I've written for them as I wrestle with this dragon, that will never be seen by the players. But I have it there, so I know personally the answer to these questions. So if the question does come up, I can answer that with confidence because I've already thought about it. I already thought about how this world works. I've already thought about how they work in this. And sometimes I think about things on the fly, too. This is actually why I enjoy storytelling a lot, and also why I work a little bit better with almost... I don't necessarily want to improv all the time as a player. I like to have a more controlled environment when I'm a player, but when I'm a DM, I actually do... I found that I do really appreciate an improv style. 13. Because then I can kind of be like, here's the setting. Watch how my players react. And half the time, they'll come up with something better than what I have in mind. Or I'll be like, okay, we have some dead space. Let me put something out there that I think is insignificant. And then they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's the secret and everything. I'm like, sure, it is now. I admittedly don't do that a lot, actually. I more like have, like, the way I say it is that I was asked one time how I'd like DM. I go in with like a checklist of things I want to accomplish and ways I think that can happen. And most of the time with my group is a little bit more on the chaotic side. So half the time I'll go in and I'll have this thing in mind, like, say that, like, the thing that needs to be accomplished is for the quest is, like, they have to talk to so-and-so character, and then they'll learn, like, the nature of the next boss fight, or something. Like, they have to go here and get this piece of lore, or they need to go and meet with this person to get this artifact. I'll have that in mind, but I might put the location in there, and they might not go to the location, they might go somewhere else. But then I can go, like, when they get to the location, then they're looking for something, and, like, maybe they find a random prisoner or something in a prison that I didn't intend them going there. And then they'll be like, this person has this thing to do with the artifact we're looking for. And they'll be like, you bet they do. And then you redirect them where you want them to go, you know? I think that's just DMing 101 in some ways. But I like doing that kind of improvisational style, because, like, the last mission we did, 21... The last mission we did, like, they had to look for something for this, like, spell that they're chasing down a cult. And so they have this spell thing that they don't know what it does. And so they were finding prisoners. And so I came up with the idea of, like, well, wait a minute. This one character is missing just because I forgot to add them into the scene. I'm like, so what if I made them a prisoner instead? Then they can still find the character, still find the information they need, and also have a prison breakout, which is fun. So a lot of the times, I didn't go in with the idea of them going to do a prison heist. But sometimes I go and, like, present them with options, and they're like, yep, the best way to do this is to do it this way. I've spoken about before that, like, the way they dealt with a hag once was, like, they, the one character essentially got really good persuasion and, you know, like, proposed to the hag, and she said yes, mainly because she wanted to steal his soul. And, you know, that was the character's smart way in to sneak into her lair. Was to essentially be the wedding planners to make a whole, you know, for her wedding that would happen the next day. And they could have just snuck in at that. They could have even snuck in that night. But no, they went full out. They were planning to have a wedding. They were going to have a full-on wedding with a reception. And they went into all the different servants and gave them roles. And, like, in the wedding. And they, like, had decorations and prepared vows. Like, they went all out on it. And so I was like, you know what? That's fun. That's way better than any boss fight I planned. And of course, at the end of it, they still fought the hag. It was just at the altar. Because they were trying to keep the one character from saying I do, so he didn't end up, like, owing his soul to this hag. But, like, it still happened. They just had a full-on wedding before it happened. And I love doing that. That's the fun of doing group storytelling. Is that, like, I can come up with ideas. And I think I come up with a fair good amount of ideas. But a lot of the times the things that they come up with to bounce off of my ideas are like, I couldn't have come up with that myself. I'm so glad you did that. The amount of characters that they've, like, adopted that I'm like, yeah, I don't have a name for this guy, and I'll give a random name, and next thing you know that's, like, the group child. I'm like, cool, this is what we're doing now, I guess. 14. You see how I'm, like, wrestling with this dragon because it's just gone so long at this point. 16. 17. 18. So it's a little bit unwieldy at the moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. One, two, three, 1, 2, 1, 2. Did I start this round too early? Yeah. Gotta love a wedding. Everyone had fun with it too. As long as the character's having fun, that's really what matters. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Oh. Thought that looked wrong. I'm only supposed to do 21. Alright. Does it look like I'm wrestling this crochet thing I'm trying to do right now? I'm trying to put its very long body in my legs. 3, 4. I'm going to count this one so I don't miscount it. 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm looking at myself and I'm like, wow, I look so intense when I'm counting. I look angry at this thing. I'm not. I just have an intense face. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay. Oh, that's okay. Thanks for hanging out. I'm probably gonna finish this row and then go get some lunch because my stomach keeps growling. Does anyone ever had it like where you like? I got this a lot as like a kid in middle school where like you have like a resting, upset face. Like when my resting face usually looks distressed, so I'd always get it from teachers being like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Nothing. This is just my face." You know. I have a resting distressed face. I think my one sister who streams with me sometimes has a resting. I have a resting, my sister has a resting angry face. I have a resting distressed face. I guess my brows are always furrowed or something. My mom always is like asking me about that. I'm like, it's only, in this, again, it's somewhat the Tism speaking, because again, I was talking a little bit about, Pokemon yesterday and talking about, like, the subway conductors, and, like, Ingo, like, his whole thing that, like, he always looks grim, even though he can be very happy on the inside, especially when he's, like, battling or doing anything with his brother, or, like, helping people, like, he likes doing that too, but, like, he's like, I don't look, he's like, I am smiling, can't you tell? And you're like, no, dude, your face looks incredibly grim. You're frowning the whole time, and he's, like, distressed by that knowledge. And I feel that way sometimes. That's why I relate to him a lot as a character. Gotta get that autistic representation in there. But, like, I feel that way a lot. Where, like, gift receiving can be a very stressful thing for me. Not because of the gift, but because I know that, like, a lot of people require visual, like, feedback. Otherwise, it feels disingenuous. It's a telemarketer. It's not sure because it says like spam caller. I am expecting a call at some point today. But I guess if it isn't, then they'll either call me back or they'll leave a message. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can kind of relate to that, like, you know, people like you know, visual feedback, and I don't express much with my face, or really with my body at all. My voice isn't usually the most I'll do is I'll like have like when they say I have like a cheesy grin. But sometimes it's a little stressful just to be like, I want to show you that I really do appreciate that, and I feel very touched that like you thought of me, you remembered my name, you remembered what I like. But then, like, you know, trying to show that visually can be very difficult for me sometimes. So sometimes, like, that's why I can relate to, like, Ingo a lot, where I'm like, sometimes the only way you can do that is, like, you speak louder, or you get more frantic with your body. Like, I relate to that, because I've definitely felt that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Alright, what's next? Twelve, 9, 6. Okay. Let me try and focus on this for a moment so I don't keep skipping stitches. Whip the thing back around. 1, 2, 3. Sorry if I look really intimidating right now. I'm just focusing. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is it 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is it. I can never tell if this row looks right until I finish it, and then I'm like, okay, yep, that looks correct. Which means that sometimes you're wasting like half an hour working on something and being like, only to be like, oh, that doesn't look right. Let me pull it all out and do it all over again. 3, 4. I just need to stretch my back a little bit. I've been hunching a little bit while I've been doing this. 6, 7. I hope people can hear me all right, because I understand I speak into my chest sometimes when I'm working. 8, 9, 10. Back again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Oh, whoops. Actually, don't need to go that far. Go to F. So I don't need the 6. I don't need the 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. see if I did this right. This is the thing that messes me up without this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And decrease. Here's the part where I have to stair step it down, and this is where it ties the hump together. The problem is if I don't do it right, it can be facing in the wrong direction. So we're going to see if this works or not. Alright, so that pulls that down like that. I think it's right. So I'm wrestling with this right now. I can this. I was trying to get the bigger hook through the stitches. It can be as much of a pain as trying to get a small hook through the stitches. Come on. Probably looks so intense right now. There we go. 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, we're getting somewhere with this thing. Not sure that's exactly how that's supposed to do, but I think that's looking at least fine. So we're going to call it there. I'm going to play with this a little later. So that's why I keep trying and stopping and going and stuff with this dragon, because it's a little bit of a complicated project. How else are you to learn, though? Pull that up. Alright. So I'm about down for here because I'm getting hungry, and I notice I'm getting messages on my phone. So it means I probably have to rejoin the real world. Thank you for everyone who came and joined today. Enjoyed chatting with everyone who hung out. Love seeing some new people in the chat. Love having discussions. Love crocheting. So, where will I be next? So, I probably will not be here at all for the weekend. I got D&D tomorrow. And then I need to sleep for at least one day this week. So, I'll probably be back Monday at some point to stream during the day. I imagine an earlier stream probably again, so probably somewhere in the before noon period. So, you know, anywhere from between 10 to 2. I'll probably be here again on Monday. Tuesday is when we stream. I do have that on our schedule on our Twitch channel. We stream in the evening. That's when I'll be here with my sister, and that's when we tend to play video games. The in-between days, Tuesday and Thursday, I try to keep for video games. But, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday can be anything from me just discussing topics, to crocheting, to working on my backlog list, to, you know, playing other random games I might be interested in. I might play some of my gacha games. But, yeah, so it's variable what I'll be up to. But, yeah, I'll probably be back on Monday at some point. Thank you for everyone who showed up. I hope you had a good time. I hope at the very least I was good ASMR background noise for you if you're working on something. Yeah, and I'm gonna go and get some lunch, and I'll see you guys later. Hope you were cozy with us.